Good evening, members. Agenda item 1 is Chairman's notices. This is the usual, when I can find them, the usual notices that we have. Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Council on the 15th of December 2022. My name is Councillor Boyce and I am the Chairman of the Council. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put up your hand to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent upon the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when you're invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contribution as clear and concise as possible, as we've got a long agenda tonight. Thank you. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence. Miss Bird.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies received from Councillor Beale and Councillor Morgan. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Siddle.
Yeah, there should have been apologies from Councillor Mays as well.
Councillor Mays. I think Councillor Anne Beale has sent her apologies. Councillor Thompson.
Councillor White.
And Councillor White.
I think she was hoping to be here, but...
Here she is.
Apologies, I'll take it back.
Right. Agenda item 3, the minutes of the 3rd of November on pages 7 to 14, to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on the 3rd of November and the copies enclosed. Do we accept those minutes? Great. Thank you. Agenda item 4, minutes of the 3rd of November 2022 extraordinary meeting contained on pages 15 to 18, to confirm the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting held on the 3rd of November 2022. There's a copy enclosed. Do you agree those minutes? Agreed. Is that unanimous? Thank you. Agenda item 5, declaration of interest to disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are also reminded they are also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. Is there any interest? Leader?
Thank you, Chairman. It's regarding one of the items under P&C, and it's... oh, sorry, can you hear me now? Sorry, I'll take that off then for that. It's regarding one of the items under P&C, Chairman, agenda item 19A. I wish to declare an interest in as much, I'm not quite sure it's other or none. However, if a certain item comes up, well, I won't identify, and obviously in this session, that I declare now that I'm a member of a charity organisation called Crohn's and Colitis UK, and should a matter come up, I will be leaving the chamber. So there's a certain item that might be related to that, I will leave the chamber for that item, Chairman, if it becomes an item of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Was there somebody else? No? Then we go on to agenda item 6, public questions. Have we had any from the public, Miss Bird?
No, Chairman, we've got none. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 7, Chairman's announcements. The last 2 weeks I've been very busy visiting graveyards. The last 2 Saturdays I've spent 2 or 3 hours in sub-zero temperatures in Malden Cemetery for the annual dedication of the natural burial site there, which is one of the cemetery team's very, very much success, and naming on a tree in Haybridge Cemetery. I also had the pleasure to host a party at the Plume School for Ukrainian children last Monday. That was a delight. Thank you, members. What's happened here?
Chairman, can I raise a point of order with you? I know you're going to ask me what number it is and I've forgotten, but it's the one that deals with the length of meetings, Chairman, and in particular the cut-off time at 10:30. Can I propose, Chairman, to Council that we don't take any business after 10 p.m. tonight unless we're confident that it can be dealt with by 10:30. Chairman, I say that because the forecast tonight is -6, and I said a lot of us have got to go to work in the morning, me included. And Chairman, apart from anything else, without even saying that, Chairman, we should also think about the staff, and in particular those that are involved in private and confidential items, which could potentially run on to goodness knows when. Thank you, Chairman.
That the point of order there is in the Constitution that the meeting lasts from 9:30 till 10:30. So you're partly right. I would hope we can finish by 9:30. However, it will be the chairman's discretion as to what time the meeting finishes. I'm aiming, or I hope we're all aiming, for at the most 10:30. Thank you. Right, then we go on to agenda item 8, the minute book, to consider the recommendations coming from the committees, and we have A, Strategy and Resources Committee of the 10th of November, contained on pages 19 to 38. Miss White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we have two recommendations. The recommendations are little 1, that the detailed fees and charges for 2023-2024 are set out in Appendix A to these minutes be agreed, and little 2, that the inflation rate be applied to those fees and charges as detailed in Appendix B to these minutes. Now, before we go to discussion or ratification, do I have a proposer and a seconder for this? Okay, thank you very much, members. Okay, so over to you, Mr. Chairman, for discussion.
Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I just want to be absolutely sure. I just want to be absolutely sure, but by agreeing this recommendation, we aren't going to hog-tie ourselves later when we get to considering other issues. I see what the report says, but some of these issues do link, and because of that, Chairman, I'm just a tad concerned that if we agree these all together, that we might find that we've already made a decision into relation to what we're going to be considering afterwards. And I believe that if we make this decision, the 6-month rule will apply. Thank you.
Ms White?
Well, Chairman, I'm in your hands. It's not my decision to make, I don't think.
There's a proposal to agree the recommendation that's been proposed and seconded. Those in favour, please show. Is somebody counting?
Let's have a recorded vote. This is dangerous. This is very dangerous.
16. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. That is carried then. Thank you, Ms White. Agenda item 9, minutes of the meeting of the council. There's a list there. Is there any questions under 6.2? Councillor Fluker.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to bring members' attention to the minutes of performance governance and audit, and on particular the meeting of the 17th of November.
Wait, sorry, which of those listed are you referring to?
Sorry, Chairman, and maybe I wasn't speaking loud enough a moment ago when I said performance governance and audit.
That's the third from the bottom, 17th of November.
That's Excellent. Obviously, my microphone is working. Yeah, the 17th of November. Chairman, in particular, I think it's page 70 odd, but the summary of work that was carried out by the internal audit team, and it speaks to the amendments to their plan, and in particular. And Chairman, I'm mindful of what I'm going to say, but the words I'm referring to now were said in public session at that meeting. And it goes on to say, it talks about cyber security, which will provide further assistance on the work completed following the attempted fraud. Now, I know about a cyber attack. I think the committee referred to that as a scam. But now it's been talked about by fraud. So I wonder if the chairman of the committee, and I'm sorry for putting you in a difficult position, not least of all that we spoke today, but I wonder if we could have some more information about this and why the core of this information, bearing in mind I believe the police investigation is finished, is being withheld from the public. There's a lot of public interest in this, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fluker. Councillor Stamp.
Oh, sorry, we didn't say
I was just going to say, thank you, Chairman. It's the first time it's been brought to my attention about this very subject. I think it's a little bit unfair that it's actually just landed on my doorstep without me having a chance to actually read the minutes again to review what was actually said. I can't take it from you now, Councillor Fluker. So can I ask that it is deferred and brought up to the next meeting and we just don't agree those minutes? Because there's no way I can actually say yes or no.
You can give a written response if
I'll give you a written
to
all members, Chairman.
It goes to all members, yes.
Okay, I'm happy to do that.
With respect, I think my question was also levelled at the officers in relation to why this is being suppressed.
The question will be recorded.
Well, it is being recorded because somebody's just told me to speak up, but they like the question. But I think it's important that we now understand from CLT why this information's been suppressed, and I look forward to seeing that written response to all members tomorrow morning, Chairman, because nothing's going to happen.
I don't think it will be tomorrow morning. We'll still be at this rate. We'll still be sitting here tomorrow morning. Agenda item 10, notice of motions. Now, I've allowed these motions to appear on the agenda, Councillor Fluker, as it's Christmas, but also that if the 1, 2, and 3 motions were referred to relevant committees or further reports that we have later on, it would have made a nonsense of your motion 4, because the public, which you're being transparent for, won't have a clue what the motion 4 was talking about. But motion 1, it will be considered in the resolution to treat the report as exempt information and be dealt with as private and confidential. And you can therefore present your motion at the point on agenda item 18 in connection with agenda item 19A. Motion 2 relates to agenda item 12, which the motion wishes to reduce the SRAs, although agenda item 12 has a recommendation for change in members' allowances from May. This does not prevent you, Councillor Fluker, presenting this motion as part of the revision to members' allowances. It would seem part and parcel of a review of both basic and special responsibility allowances. Motion 3, this forms part of the savings items at agenda item 19A, which contains rejected savings options at page 147 of the pack. This motion could be put at this point. Motion 4, I think I've actually answered, but you do have the right to continue with that motion at the moment.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And can I say that's exactly what I was expecting you to say, and I'm grateful that you did, because the motions have been published now, and I'm certainly heartened, Chairman, by the responses I've had from members of the public concerning them. And I think motion 4, Chairman, in the past there has been some confusion about my motions going forward, although I understand from the LGA it may well have been because of the way I wrote them, but I don't actually remember anybody telling me here that they weren't written properly. But if anybody needs any advice,
I'm
I'll
having
give it.
difficulty hearing you, Councillor Fluker.
Sorry, Chairman, and I think so is the whole of Southminster. So, Chairman, the motion 4 was really just
I
to...
thought we were district councillors.
Sorry, Chairman, can I just remind you that I'm the democratic representative of Southminster Ward first and then a district councillor, and that's exactly how the people of Southminster understand it and have done for the last 11 and a half years. And I wish them all well for Christmas. So I think, Chairman, you know, the reason for motion 4 was really, Chairman, to make sure that this was dealt with openly and transparency. And can I thank you for doing just that? So I'll withdraw the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we then move on? We're doing well, members. Questions in accordance with Procedure Rule 6.3, which notice has been given. Miss Bird, I take it there has been none?
That's right, Chairman, we have none, thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 12, report of the Independent Remuneration Panel, contained on pages 43 to 72. Leader.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is obviously, as the report is titled, Independent Panel Review Members' Allowances. And it's the fact they did review the members' allowances, Chairman, on the 15th of August 2022. And it's because there is good practice actually to review every few years the allowances and mechanism for increases. And benchmarking was a part of the process, and members can see that within their pack. There was also a member survey conducted. I'm sure many members will appreciate that and had the opportunity to participate in that survey. And I'm sure a great number of members did. The independent review panel agreed removal of the broadband allowance. They did make reference to that, but they also indicated certain exceptions regarding that, financial hardship, and the independent review panel also placed an emphasis on diversity and money from removal of broadband allowances to support maternity policy, which they have recommended in line with other authorities. And it's also to say, Chairman, they also were quite clear they did not recommend any deviation from the agreeing uplift in line with the percentage increase of staff. And I draw members' attention to the implications, impact on equalities regarding the promotion of equality in terms of the report, and also the reflection on strengthening communities, allowing more to access becoming a member. Chairman, the recommendations therefore are as on the order paper. They're little 1 to little 3, and I'll read them out if you like. Little 1, that the Council supports the recommendation of the Independent Remuneration Panel that members' allowances will increase in line with the average staff pay increases from 2023 as set out in section 3.6 below. Little 2, that broadband allowance payment is withdrawn from April 2023. And little 3, that the types of expenses that members can claim be detailed in the new members' allowance policy under approved duties section of Appendix 1. And I think that's helpful actually for all members, Chairman. And little 4, that the newly drafted members' allowance policy, Appendix 1, and maternity, paternity, shared parental leave and adoption policy, Appendix 2, are adopted, Chairman. And I will move those recommendations, Chairman, if it helps the debate.
Seconded, and may I put an amendment, please, Chairman? Which would be to add a recommendation.
I don't think you can second and then move an amendment at this stage. But as Councillor Siddle seconded it, you can move an amendment.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. I propose that we add a 5th recommendation, which would be that we refer this special responsibility allowances to the Independent Remuneration Panel to deal with that, since they are independent and they are in a position then to look at everything, because there's at least one very busy and active position that has no allowance, and others that I think could do with some review, and indeed some may be revised downwards, but that's my proposal as an extra recommendation. Thank you.
Is that seconded? Yep. Right. I assume that you, when you put your hand up, Councillor Fluker, you weren't seconding that
Goodness.
amendment.
Goodness, I thought it was only the monitoring officer that could read my mind, but clearly you can as well. Can I speak now?
Please do.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Look, I take a certain amount of,
We're dealing with the motion and the amendment.
We are indeed, Chairman. So, sorry, can you just give me some guidance over what you meant by motion?
Well, when the leader proposed the recommendations, I think it was Councillor Siddle that seconded that. So that then was a substantive motion. We're now debating the amendment that Councillor Thompson has asked for.
Okay, I'm grateful for your guidance. I mean, obviously, when the word motion is mentioned, it conjures up all sorts of things in my mind. Chairman, there is something, flawed in this report. I'm grateful for the remuneration panel for what they've done, but I think we do have to look at some of these figures, particularly the comparison and where you've got cabinets and where you haven't got cabinets. And of course, one has to accept that cabinet members tend to make executive decisions, which we don't in a committee system. But there are clearly some issues here. I mean, PGA and S&R, they're due to meet, I think, 6 times according to the calendar next year, which would mean that the chairman would receive £904 in allowances for each meeting, and £384 for the vice chairman, which is a huge amount of money, Chairman. I know how much I earn, and I know how much I have to work for it. But I mean, £904. And yes, of course, someone's going to say, yes, but we have agenda meetings, okay? So that brings us down to £500 a meeting. And then we're on working groups. Well, it seems to me that it seems to be the same cohort of members that are on all the working groups at this council. So just because you're a chairman and you go to a working group, the likelihood is you were likely to go to it even if you weren't the chairman or the vice chairman. So clearly there is something that's not quite right with all of this, Chairman. My main concern is, Chairman, that if we were to agree to these recommendations now, and the Deputy Leader's suggestion, which I suspect was spurned on by my own motion, because I would have thought that the Conservative group would have looked at these costs and thought this is not sustainable, but clearly they didn't until I put a motion in. But what concerns me enormously is if we agree these recommendations now and the amendment, then when we come to talk to members' allowance later on, when there is a recommendation from officers and the Tier 2 managers to reduce members' allowance, then we can't do that because we've made a decision now based on these recommendations. So perhaps you could give me some guidance on that, because I don't think we should hog-tie ourselves.
I think the motion is correct, and I think the amendment is correct, which is what we're debating. I've got Councillor Durham next.
Thank you, Chair. Do you require me to stand, Chairman, or not?
Well, please.
I will, yes. But Chairman, I just want to say that local authorities rely on an independent remuneration panel to assess the work that councillors do, and it is completely objective, working out the amount of hours that they put in, and I think that we should adopt the figures that they have put forward. I don't have a big problem with the special responsibility allowances, and responsibility here is the key word. I recall as the chairman of what was Community Services back then and was now S&R, there is a considerable amount of responsibility that goes with that particular post, because you're required to make, in cooperation with officers, some quite significant decisions on behalf of this authority. I might just say that the Essex County Council also had a remuneration review via the independent remuneration panel. That was put to full council to make the decision, and full council accepted that. The Liberal Democrat opposition to a man voted against it, but it now transpires all but one actually took the allowance. So it would be my suggestion, Chairman, if a member doesn't want to take the uplift, they're not obliged to take it. So, as I said, that was the offer given at Essex County Council, but those that voted against the uplift, in the main, ended up taking it anyway. So, thank you very much, Chairman.
Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair. As a point to note, as Chair of District Planning, there is no special allowance, nor would I take one even if there was one. I see that Councillor Fluker as a duty and an honour and a privilege. A couple of things about the report, just so I want to get the clarity before I make a determination on whether to support or not. There's on 3.3, on page 43, we talked about what is the legal and agreed definition of financial hardship, because within the paper that supported the appendix, I'd like to see how that's worked out, what the determination of that is and how it's calculated. And also, if a member came through who was suffering financial hardship, how what information would be needed, because you're talking of very, very personal information coming through. Also, the paternity and maternity policies for members, it does seem to be a good idea. Maybe for other members. Well, you know, bless us all. I get very uncomfortable about taking leave as a member. I think when we stand as members and we went out and canvassed, we stood for something, and the trust was given to us. So I see this very much as a 365 days a year, 24/7 job, that I wouldn't take leave unless I was seriously ill. So I do struggle a little bit about that. And finally, again, I think Councillor Fluker mentioned it. In the paper that supports it, in the Members' Allowance Scheme, under 10.5, it talks about approved duties. And it goes on, the functions of the authority or any of its committees or subcommittees outlined as follows: in a member's capacity as a chair, vice chair, cabinet member, or official opposition group, on a committee or cabinet function, attendance at a meeting with officers to discuss matters associated with the responsibilities of the committee or the cabinet. I'm very uncomfortable with that detail because we're not a cabinet-run council. So I'm not convinced that the detail is here, and I find it very strange that we're talking about a cabinet when we don't have a cabinet. So that's just
Mr.
observations.
Leslie.
Thank you, Chairman. The independent remuneration panel recommended that if the broadband allowance was removed, that some money be set aside for hardship. Obviously, at the moment, it's very discretionary. There isn't a scheme proposed around this. It's a set of money that it can be put aside and available, and potentially could come forward at the moment for a formal agreement. I suppose in terms of the maternity-paternity policy, I could probably only point to the Prime Minister of New Zealand, who took some time out from her role due to maternity leave around that factor. I think in terms of the expenses policy, then we surveyed members and whether the definition should be strengthened. I think at the moment it says official duties on it. So there is a move, actually, if we strengthen that, that is a definition that's coming down, and there potentially could be some areas that could fall outside of that. I think at the moment it's very much linked to direction of the council. So if it's council directed activities, that is accessible. If not, then that could potentially fall outside the remit. So I think it's a decision for members around the expenses policy, if they feel actually the current wording, official duties, is sufficiently flexible to allow expenses to be reclaimed, or if indeed there is a tighter policy which is outlined in the report, or if they want to make recommended changes to that. So really for members to decide if they feel that current wording of official duties is actually sufficient and flexible, or if based on the survey there is something more strict and with clearer guidelines to come in.
Very briefly, Councillor Lagan.
Thank you, Chair.
I hope that does answer some of your questions.
Absolutely not, Chair. None of my questions have been answered.
Oh, right.
Thank you. I just want that recorded. So the questions are raised, the statements are fair, Mr. Leslie, but you haven't answered any of the questions, I'm afraid.
Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to back up some of what Councillor Durham said in terms of the allowances. And I know from my own experience as Chairman of S&R that it's not just things that we do in that position in the council, but it's also all the work and the working groups that we attend outside the council. And when we go to those, so maybe this answers Councillor Lagan's question, you're going to that meeting as a cabinet member because you're representing that part of the council. No. So in inverted commas, because the other people who are attending that meeting from other authorities that may have a cabinet are the same people as our committee chairs. And I don't like that wording in, but that's maybe why that wording is there. In 2018, before I was elected, apparently there was a need for a transformation, a need for a lot of cuts because of the financial difficulties that this council was under. At that particular time, the leader of the council was Councillor Fluker. And I don't remember him putting forward this motion at that particular time when he was the leader of this council. And from what I remember in terms of looking, before I got elected, I looked at how much the leader was taking. I think it was round about £20,000, including all his expenses. So I really find it quite ironic that Councillor Fluke has brought forward his motion at this particular time. And I think it's a little bit of electioneering on his part.
The leader has the right to sum up. So I'll go to Councillor Bell first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of issues. I'm not that well off. I take this role very seriously, and when I took it on, I had to give up a significant amount of my freelance work in order to do the role properly. Do I think that allowances should be linked with the number of meetings people attend, the amount they put into the role? Yes, I do, but that's not on the table. In terms of diversity, cost of living is going to affect everybody, not just people who are having children. So I don't think it's going to increase diversity, putting the money from the broadband allowance into a maternity and adoption policy. My broadband's going up by 60 quid a year next year, and you want to remove the allowance that pays for that. I have some problems with this. Thank you.
Miss Bell, I noticed you, Councillor Bell, I noticed you got an arm problem. I hope all is well.
Thank you. It was a snowboarding accident, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Swain.
Thanks, Chairman. This is a bit confusing. I thought we would debate Councillor Thompson's amendment separately from the rest connected with the remuneration panel.
Councillor Swain, I did explain that we're dealing with the motion, the leader's motion and the amendment in one debate.
Yes, well, that's a bit complicated. I mean, I only have one or two comments on the main substance of the motion, but I do have a comment on the special allowances, and I disagree with what has been said about the need for it. The basic allowance, which I have to say I wasn't aware of really when I was elected, and I certainly wasn't aware that there was a special responsibility allowance when I became a vice chairman of S&R. But the basic allowance is what it is, and there's a procedure for uprating that. But the special responsibilities allowance seems to me that you don't have to have it. If you don't have to take on these special responsibilities if you don't want to. If you want to do that, if you put yourself forward as for a leading role, a chairmanship, you recognise that you are doing that so that you can contribute more in that role. So, I mean, that is something that would have been debated later. On the other matters in the substantive motion, first of all, I can see the broadband allowance shouldn't be a sort of across-the-board thing. It should be for individual or special cases. To the extent that it's withdrawn and put into this promotion of diversity, I would like to have some idea whether it actually would amount to much in practice. I have one question on the actual wording of the bit concerning adoption. The way it's worded, it refers to special leave on birth or adoption, which seems to imply adoption of very young children. But people adopt older children. Is there the same reason for special allowances? It's maybe in the wording that...
Thank you, Councillor Swain. Councillor Fluker, I'm sorry, I think you wanted to bring a point of personal explanation.
Well, yes, I did. I mean, my first question is really...
Not a question. I thought you indicated you had to query something Councillor Siddle said, and you had a personal explanation. Well, I did,
Chairman, because, you know, one, Chairman, I'm delighted to know that he was stalking my expenses before he even came on this. But, Chairman, you've got to, if you wind back 3.5 years, and look, you know, my expenses for that period are part of a public record, and you will see, you know, I can remember going to meetings every day, sometimes twice a day, and I was driving all around the county, and that's reflected in my mileage. I mean, goodness knows, the value of my car must have dropped 10 grand because I put an extra 20,000 miles on it one year. But, Chairman, times have changed, and I made that clear in my motion that most of these meetings now are done by teams, so it doesn't take up, you know, so much time. You know, maybe in the interests of everybody, the people that receive special responsibility allowances leave their diaries open, their corporate diaries open, so we can see what they're up to. And I'm sure that if they're doing more than six meetings...
Mine is always open to anybody that wants to have a look at it.
Well, Chairman, I know you're one of the most open and transparent members of this council, and I'm grateful. Not only are we neighbours, Chairman, your card's outside.
Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief for a change. I actually think that by stopping the broadband allowance, you're actually denying people on a low income. Broadband costs a lot of money. It certainly costs me a lot of money, especially in the sticks, to get a fast speed. And I think you're actually then stopping people, like Councillor Bell said, and I totally agree, which is very rare, with Councillor Durham. Very rare at Essex and here. In the fact that if members don't want the special allowances, why don't they hand them back and go to the special fund to help people if they are suffering financial difficulties? Surely that makes more sense. And the people who do need it, people's financial conditions change, Chairman, all the time, unless you're quite wealthy, and I don't think some people in this chamber maybe are wealthy, and there's others that aren't, Chairman. So I think it's down to the individuals, and I think we should vote accordingly.
Thank you. We're going round on second calls now, but Councillor Durham and Councillor Thompson, who hasn't actually spoken.
I'll just say thank you very much, Councillor Stamp. It's nice to agree on something. All I wanted to say, Chairman, is look, I didn't know there was an allowance before I stood, and it was a surprise when I was asked my bank account details. Not an unpleasant surprise, but nobody does this for the money. If they do, they're deluded, because if you worked out how much you get per hour, you'd be better stacking shelves in Aldi or Lidl. I actually agree that the special allowance for broadband is actually a bit outdated, because it was introduced many years ago before there was widespread use of broadband, and it was put there to encourage people to pay the extra for broadband. I very much doubt that anybody here hasn't got broadband. It's now part of an everyday necessity, so I do support that being dropped.
Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Passenger.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to mention the broadband allowance, and I did put, in fact, in the survey that I think most of us, by and large, would continue to have the same service of broadband, whatever we pay for, whether we were members or not. And I think there's certainly a case for someone who perhaps wouldn't or would have a different and cheaper package. I think that's an argument for paying it. But I mean, I have to admit, when I stop being a councillor, my broadband situation won't change. But one thing I wanted to say about the special allowances and the extra responsibilities, and I have to say particularly the leader, and I've worked with two of them now as their deputies, if you take away that level of allowance, and many authorities have more, you're actually restricting the position to people who can afford to do it, because it's very difficult to work at the same time as do particularly that job. And I know in the past, I've had to, like Councillor Bell, not now, but I've had to give up work in order to be a councillor and spend time doing it. It's not always easy. Some people could juggle their diaries and it doesn't affect their income, other people not so much. And I don't think we should rule anyone out. Obviously, anyone who feels they can hand it back, not take it, absolutely fine and good for them. Nobody has to take any of it. Thank you.
Councillor Bassinger.
Mr. Chairman, I struggle with the withdrawal of the broadband. I mean, for one, I live out in the sticks, as everyone says, and my broadband used to be on my phone, actually, and it used to work perfectly well. When we went to using Teams, I not only had to change and buy a BT broadband package, which is now a monthly payment, but also I had to buy an Apple Mac because the computer I was using couldn't handle the Teams speed. So, I think just to participate as a councillor, I had to buy all this equipment. And I think there are other councillors probably in the same boat who probably, like me, would rather not have spent my money actually buying that kind of broadband. But, I accept I had to just to participate. So I think the broadband payment, I think, is relevant, and I think we should keep it.
Thank you. Nobody else wants to speak. Leader, sum up before we take a vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened all to the comments made in the Chamber. I won't cover all of them, but I have sympathies with many of those views stated. What I would say is, I know Councillor Fluker has made reference to driving in the car a lot, but I can assure him that you are even more accessible when you have a computer and you can join any meeting by Teams. I would like to say, since I've been leader and I've been leader previously, I can see the change in demand and the work that is required of the current chairpersons. I know how hard Councillor Stamp, Councillor White, and I would say the leader of the opposition, having been a leader of opposition here, I recognise the time that needs to be applied to all those positions, and the deputy leader. I do think there's been an independent panel review, and therefore I have to ask myself, what is the point of having them if we don't pay due regard to perhaps what their recommendations bring forward, having looked at it. I do agree with Mrs Thompson's amendment. I actually do feel it would be good to have the independent panel review sit and actually look at the special responsibility allowances, because I can tell you there is a post that I consider perhaps should have an allowance and has not at the moment. But that is a matter for the independent review panel if we do call them in. And I can see another area where I think there's an anomaly. I'm not going to go into my responses to the survey, where in fact I think another allowance may have to be higher. There are responsibilities that go with this, and Councillor Siddle's quite correct. When you do go out to some of these outside bodies, like some of them are called for portfolio holders, that makes no difference between whether you're a cabinet member or a committee chairman. There is one I used to attend, and I believe Councillor Siddle then went to it as well, and I think Councillor White should be going to that particular outside body now. And I do agree very much that actually, should the council agree to the recommendations before it tonight, it's up to every individual. I'm not going to judge every individual's personal circumstances here, and I'm not going to comment on them. But what I do comment on is diversity. The Local Government Association are very keen to see diverse councils that represent actually the communities they serve, and that covers everything: disabilities, ethnic minorities, more women of a younger age, the whole gamut that can be considered in equality. This council also recently looked at equality, diversity, inclusion, And perhaps these allowances in the form that's coming before members tonight actually do support that. And the independent panel made great play, as I mentioned when I introduced this item, about diversity and the reasons for the broadband allowance. With the increase proposed, the broadband, that would cover, I think, the removal of the broadband allowance. And I think if you don't want to have the allowance, if you don't want to have any special responsibility allowances, then like Councillor Stamp said, and Councillor Durham and others, that you have the right to actually say you don't. I certainly, in a previous position, did actually, when the times of austerity came upon this council and our residents, actually took a reduction in allowance, and I did also on another body that I was a member at. That was my choice. I did it privately, and therefore other members have that right to do so. So there, Chairman, at the beginning of this debate, I did move the recommendations as per the order paper. I'm happy to accept the amendment, and you've agreed that that's to be taken as one on this, and I think that's a fair amendment to be made, and I think we do want to have this independent review panel look at special responsibility allowances. So with that amendment, Chairman, and the other ones, little 1 to little 4 inclusive, I will move that recommendation again, Chairman, as I did in the first place at the start of this debate.
Thank you, Miss Bird. God, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. Actually,
can we have a recorded vote, please, Mr. Chairman?
Right.
Chairman, sorry, I'm just looking at recommendation 1, and if you read recommendation 1, and maybe I don't understand why it doesn't actually say it in recommendation 1, but if you read recommendation 1 in relation to paragraph 3.6, in my mind we are voting to increase the members' allowance by 5.25%.
Mr. Leslie, is that correct?
That's what it says.
Yep, so that's the average increase. So that is correct. The average increase is 5.25% for 2023.
That seems to be a good point, because I think there's a recommendation further on, Miss White, isn't there? That all allowances be reduced by 5%. So I take your point. But I'm going to go to the vote now.
But Chairman, we will hog tie ourselves when we get to the next meeting, because we can't change that.
Miss Bird.
Chairman, with the removal of the broadband, it's not exactly 5.2%.
Councillor Siddle.
Yes, it seems to be the will of the council that little 2 is not with the broadband allowance is not withdrawn. So I think what we need to do is to remove that particular recommendation.
Okay.
I have moved my recommendation.
I intend to take the vote on the amendment, which only relates to that part of the report. Little 3. I will then take a vote on a substantive motion, which will be for the report as been presented. I'm not sure what we're doing with the Wi-Fi broadband allowance.
Well, at the moment you've got a motion and a seconded. The report of the remuneration panel is accepted, so that means the deletion of the report.
Yeah.
Now, but the amendment is the remuneration panel look at special responsibilities, and that's what you needed is a vote on the amendment.
Yeah, right. The those in favour of the amendment, which, sorry, Miss Bird, can it be put up on the screen?
Could I help, Chairman?
Yeah.
Chairman, my understanding is, and the Deputy Leader will correct me if I'm wrong, is that her amendment was that there should be a referral to the remuneration panel only, again, to review the special responsibilities
Yes,
allowances,
yeah,
and particularly
I said that.
there was one post. All the posts. Yeah, that's what I understand the amendment is, Chairman.
Yeah.
And that we remove little 2 as a recommendation.
Okay, I'm happy to go with that as the amendment. So those in favour of the amendment, please show. Oh no, sorry. We do you want a recorded vote? Leader. Yeah.
Sorry, you've got the deputy leader. Sorry, Chairman. I actually only heard 2 people speak against the broadband allowance, and there is in all this a facility for applying to get it back for individuals. So I don't quite understand why we're binning the broadband allowance.
Well,
I mean, the removal of.
Don't complicate things.
Well, no, Chairman, can I just be clear? The amendment I took to be Councillor Thompson's, and I think I did move the entirety of the report with that amendment in.
Yes.
And that was seconded, I thought, Chairman.
Yes, it was, and that is the subject to the amendment will become the substantive motion. We have just got the amendment which refers to the special responsibility allowance being referred to the remuneration panel.
I just quickly.
That is what we take now. Councillor Skeens.
I just simply want to say that I'm very confused on Councillor Siddle's proposal that we remove the requirement for broadband. That is to say, we remove the removal of broadband.
Yeah, well,
we need that to be. If we vote on the first thing, how do we get an opportunity to vote on the second?
Because you could make another amendment to a substantive motion.
Why don't we just include it now? Is my question, Chairman.
Because it's not been debated.
It has been debated with respect, Chairman. It's been debated and mentioned by 4 or 5 people in this council.
Not as an amendment. It hasn't. We have to be formal with these things. Right, Miss Bird, would you call the roll then, please?
We just voted on the amendment from Councillor Mrs Thompson, which is referring special responsibility allowances to the independent members remuneration panel for review. Sorry, not the independent remuneration panel for review.
Yes, that's it.
Sorry, a bit of a mouthful. So members, if you could indicate for, against, or abstain, please, when I call your name. Starting with Councillor Bassett.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Abstain.
Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs Channer.
For.
Councillor Dewick.
Abstain.
Councillor Doran.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Mrs Fleming.
For.
Councillor Stryker.
For.
Councillor Hurd.
For.
Councillor Helm.
Against.
Councillor Hubner.
For.
Councillor Holt.
For.
Councillor Keys.
For.
Councillor Lagan.
Against.
Councillor Morley.
For.
Councillor Nunn.
For.
And Councillor Shaughnessy.
For.
Councillor Siddle.
For.
Councillor Skeens.
Abstain.
Councillor Spenceley.
Abstain.
Councillor Stubb.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
For.
Councillor Mrs Stilts.
Abstain.
Councillor Swain.
For.
Councillor Mrs Thompson. For. Councillor Miss White.
For.
Thank you. Chairman, the results of that are 17 for, 3 against and 7 abstain.
Thank you. That amendment is carried. Therefore, the substantive motion is the report as it stands, as amended by referral back for the special responsibility allowances to the remuneration panel. Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Chairman. So I would like to put forward a recommendation that the broadband allowance payment is not withdrawn from April 2023.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is that agreed, Councillor Fluker?
Well, Chairman, this is really difficult because I only get 8 megapixels a second. Is it tiny? Is it MPS? MPS. I only get 8. And that's my service level, which means if my wife's ordering my Christmas present, I can't turn on my laptop and go to Civica. But of course, I could enhance that, but it would cost more than £30 a month. So I do wonder whether or not, is that a special needs? Is it? Can I apply for it? I don't know. And just to pick up on what Councillor Channon said, it would be nice to get some nice young men on here other than young women. Thank you. Thought that was very.
So, do you agree that amendment, members? Agreed? No?
I'll vote. My vote can be recorded against that, Chairman.
Me too.
Okay. Yes, let's have a show of hands. Those in favour of that amendment, please show. Somebody got a score yet?
I don't think it matters,
Against? 2?
No.
Oh, 4, sorry. I think that amendment's carried. Now I'll put the substantive motion, which I hope everybody understands. The broadband stays and the special responsibility allowance is referred to the remuneration panel. All the rest of the report as is. Is that agreed? Agreed.
Recorded vote, please.
Councillor, Miss Bird, please.
For clarity, this is to increase the members' allowance by 5.25%, isn't it?
If you say so, Councillor Fluker. Yeah. I don't know. I think Mr. Leslie has confirmed that.
So we're now going to vote to put up the members' allowance by 5.25%. Okay, thank you.
I think that was the substance of the report.
Yeah.
That was the substance of the report, members. Miss Bird, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Chairman, members, if you can indicate for, against, or abstain, please, when I call your name. This is for the substantive motion, as the Chairman's just set out. Starting with Councillor Bassett, please.
4.
Thank you, Councillor Bell.
4.
It was 4.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear it, apologies. Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Channon.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Dewick.
Abstain.
Councillor Durham.
4.
Councillor Edwards.
4.
Councillor Mrs. Fleming.
Abstain.
Councillor Fluker.
Against.
Councillor Hurd.
4.
Councillor Helm.
Against.
Councillor Hubner.
4.
Councillor Hull.
4.
Councillor Keys.
4.
Councillor Lagger.
Against.
Councillor Morley.
4.
Councillor Nunn.
4.
Councillor Shaughnessy.
4.
Councillor Siddle.
4.
Councillor Schemes.
Against.
Councillor Spencer.
Abstain.
Councillor Stamp.
Against, because of the increase.
Councillor Stevens.
4.
Councillor Stilts.
Against.
Councillor Swain.
Against.
Councillor Thompson.
4.
Councillor Miss White.
She's left the chamber to leave.
Okay.
So, Chairman, the results of that are 15 for, 7 against, and 4 abstentions. Thank you.
That motion is carried. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 13, member training criteria, pages 73 to 76. Leader? Sorry?
we wait for Councillor White, please? Because some of us do understand why she's left. Can we wait for her? Because otherwise she won't be able to participate.
I don't know how long she'll be.
Well, can we see if she's all right, Chairman? I think. Oh, she's coming back.
Right, agenda item 13, member training criteria, pages 73 to 76, leader.
Oh, sorry, Chairman, I caught myself, sorry. Oh dear, thought I was going to get winded then. Right, Chairman, yes, this is the member training criteria report, and obviously it's regarding member training, and members may recall an earlier report came to this council and then was deferred for the members of the members training working group to meet and consider. The report, as indicated, proposes criteria to manage individual member training approaches and processes for managing and through the programme performance governance manager in consultation with the main member training working group. There's been a budget applied for member training, which is 2,800, and the report refers to recommendations of a previous internal audit report about formalising a training plan. Certain areas are highlighted as mandatory in paragraph 3.3 regarding that training and the those training courses that have to be delivered to members and they should embarking. Also, it refers to promotion of LGA sessions, and also there are ad hoc training courses. Appendix A, Chairman, is there to cover the aspects of ad hoc member approaches to attend a training course and how that should be actioned, and in consultation initially with group leaders, chairman of committees, SNR, PG&A, and subject to Appendix A, Chairman, being approved under the recommendations, a member form will be created. The member training working group did meet, Chairman. It has actually met on 2 occasions, but I'm making reference now to the meeting of the 18th of November. And that requested approach for ad hoc training request be included in consultation with the member training and development working group. And the approach is set out so that all members have equal access and understand how to make training requests. Chairman, I therefore refer to the recommendations in the members' pack and on the order paper. Little 1, that members approve the criteria set out at Appendix A as a process when addressing individual training queries. And 2, that the programme's performance and governance manager is authorised to establish an annual training programme of members in accordance with the approved criteria in consultation with the member training working group. And I think Mr Paul Dodson may want to say something, it might be his report.
Mr Dodson.
I have nothing to add, thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Members, agree? Councillor Stamp?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Chairman. I actually think that 2,800 is quite measly for a council this size. Burnham Town Council do over 3,000 for councillors to be trained. I think next year we all know, because we can see the amount of electioneering going on is in May, and you're going to, I would hope, would get quite a new cohort of new members, more diverse, to include everybody that we represent. And I know in the past that's been covered at the member training working group that the budget has been quite substantially more in previous years. So is there any allowance or any possibility that if more money was needed, Chairman, it could be allocated? Because we all know well-trained councillors can lead to an actually better well-trained council to represent their members, Chairman.
Councillor Stamp, you make a very good point about there will be a lot of new members next year, whatever else happens. So I think you make a good point. Mr Leslie, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, can add some to that. I think we also have subscriptions through the LGA who offer certain courses for free. We also have the Treasury Management, which is part of our built-in budget with our advisors as well, which is outside of that training budget. And of course, if the group went through, identified the training need, and there was insufficient budget to cover that, then of course a request could come forward once that figure is known for additional funding.
Councillor Fluker.
Oh, right, okay, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, sort of concur with what Councillor Stamp says. I've got a feeling the training budget at Southminster Parish is actually in excess of £3,000, and we get free training as well offered to us by EALC, some extraordinary good courses, German courses, planning courses, all sorts of stuff. But Chairman, my proposal was that we increase this budget and try and move it as close to £20,000 as possible per annum. And that proposal was based really, Chairman, on us not agreeing the last recommendations, because the council's just spent £12,500 on increasing its members' allowances. You'll find that figure buried in the report somewhere, but it's 12,500. So I would propose that we double this, Chairman, this as an amendment to the recommendation. So that would be Roman 3, Chairman, that we actually increase the members' training budget. And I think also, whilst we're sort of talking about training, I think it's really important that rather than wait for the election to be called and rather than wait for people to come forward, we sort out some dates for where we're going to have the planning training, because I always remember my good friend Councillor Jarvis, Mr Jarvis now, he's retired, and he missed out on his training because of serious work commitments, and his argument always was he only ever got 2 weeks notice. I mean, he did it in the end, but I just think we just should be just a little bit more upfront with what's required as early as possible.
So your amendment is that it be increased to 5,000?
Yes,
200, is it? Or
yeah, if you want to outbeat me.
I thought you said it doubled. I thought you said.
Well, it just looks terribly measly. If anybody, to quote Councillor Stamp.
Let's get down to some hard facts. What would your amendment say? Double?
Chairman, I don't think £200 per. Bear in mind the responsibilities of councillors. I don't think £200. We don't have to use it, but at least it's there if we do.
Yeah. What sum are you proposing?
31 times 200.
Remember training.
Right tells me it's 6,200.
And I assume that Councillor Stamp will second that.
Yes, I will second it because I'm a great believer in training.
I think I've got Councillor Stevens next.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I just want to ask.
Stand in, please.
Oh, sorry. First of all, I just want to ask a very basic question. In the member training criteria, where it says how much is the course, the first one is it's in a budget of £90. The second one says under £90, but the overall put is limited, and I think that's just a mistake. And I'd like to know what it meant to say, please.
I think it means 2,800.
Pot.
Oh, pot. Oh,
Pots,
I see.
right, okay.
Yeah.
I think it should say pot, but it's a minor detail, it's just a typo. I'd also like to make the point that I was on the licensing committee for almost a year before I had training. I didn't know that you were supposed to have training. It makes total sense that you are, but I didn't know it. And so I also didn't know that there were licensing meetings taking place. People have heard me say this before, that I simply wasn't invited to. So I didn't know that I was missing out on being able to sit on the licensing committee or on the training. And that was at a time when I could have done training anyway because they were online. So I didn't even need to wait for something to be local. And the reason I was given was that, oh, well, it's very expensive, don't you know, to go on such training. And we need to be very, very clear. We've got not a lot of new members. We've just said this. We've got a lot of new members coming in next year. So rather than just picking a random number out of the air, of, oh, let's have 5,000, let's have 3,000, I think we should be counting up how many new members are we likely to have on each of the committees where you've got to have training, and at least calculate the costs of that as a base before we add in any other nice to have training. And I'd like to see those figures, please. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to concur with Councillor Stamp and Councillor Fruker, first of all, that training is very important, and we're going to have new members next year, in particularly new members who might be on planning committees where training is compulsory. So we have to have a larger I would say nearer 10,000 rather than 6,000, even though we don't use it. But bearing in mind all the training we have to do, especially on planning, we should increase it. Thank you.
Mr. Dodson wants to make some comments, I think. Are you ready?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman. It was in answer to a couple of the points that a couple of members have made. One of them regarding the training being scheduled for new members and the onboarding process. That's already being put in place in a schedule that it's intended to circulate to all candidates when they register to be a member of the council and to stand for election, to ensure exactly those points are addressed. And just briefly on the licensing training, it wasn't a matter of the cost of it. It was a matter of availability, and that training can sometimes be difficult to arrange. So that's just a point of clarity from feedback I've had from staff. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Durham.
Oh, thank you. Chairman, training is probably one of the most important things, because having well-trained councillors is absolutely essential if we're going to make the right decisions. And scarily, I find myself agreeing with Councillor Stamp and indeed Councillor Fluker. But particularly, as we've heard, in the areas where we are making decisions based on law, that is planning and that is licensing, which have nothing to do with the political aspect, and we're not representing our wards. We are making. Sorry, Chairman. We are making decisions based on legislative items. So absolutely, and I would support as much as we can afford, and as it's been said, whether we ended up spending it, but absolutely, we must have. Ignoring the fact that there are new members coming and ignoring the fact that we get free training from EALC and the LGA, we should have a good, sufficient budget in-house for providing the training that is necessary to enable members to do their jobs properly.
Thank you. Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to say a lot of what Mr. Dodson said in terms of the onboarding that the new members will get this time, which was very, very different to what I went through when I was elected at this council, and that's where the member training working group has been invaluable in terms of defining and creating training needs analysis and forming a more detailed plan. And the other thing that who needs commending is Mrs. Hughes, who has put an awful lot of work into the training plan, into this new induction, and all new candidates will get a pack even as soon as they put their name forward. So that will be invaluable to anybody who's thinking of standing at the election, and it will have all the dates of things like planning training, so they can make sure they put them in their diary.
Councillor Spenceley.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I have to say that so far my experience of the training, and I'm not getting at anyone because I know everyone tries, but as an experienced trainer, it really isn't training. And I just think this sum seems quite ludicrous, actually. And I don't really understand why we haven't got more detail in this report about what more workup of what the need might be, so that we know what we're voting for, because this all seems a bit loose. And if there is a lovely plan, and I'm sure there must be, but wouldn't it be nice to have some of the detail? Because I can't see any of that here. So my feedback on this is that figure is completely ludicrous as a trainer. It just is ludicrous. And I think that going forward, I'm sure the member training working group is doing fantastically well, but I'd like to hear some more about it. Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you might indulge me that I can stay sitting, because I can't.
Yes,
it's not easy for me to
please.
stand at the moment. I have to say, unusually, I agree with Councillor Stamp and Councillor Fluker on this one. And I think member training is invaluable. I mean, I undertake a lot of training outside of Malden District Council, particularly on matters like planning. And I also think that in relation to agenda item 14, that this is where this extra training is absolutely required. And for me, it's not just for new members, it's for all members. And I think it's vital that we do take it forward, and I support the recommendation.
I think Councillor Stamp, before I come back to the leader. Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Chairman. All I was going to say from what Mr Dodson said was about the onboarding process. Surely they must have, I'll also congratulate how much work's been done, but they must have a figure. So if they must know what training has to be done that's mandatory and an approximate cost. So rather than put Councillor Fluker and everybody else on the spot to say, get a figure out the sky, maybe we just need to defer it and say we'll wait till the next meeting with some accurate information.
Thank you. I wasn't trying to put Councillor Fluker on the spot, but I thought when he introduced the item, he said it ought to be double, and that was all. I just wanted a figure to be stated.
Chairman, I wasn't sticking up for him. I was making a point.
I'll wind up the debate with coming back to the leader.
Thank you, Chairman. Oh, my computer's gone down again, never mind. Chairman, the point I'd make actually, Councillor Siddle has made good points, and he's obviously reiterating what Mr Dodson said, and Councillor Stamp obviously has made some good points, but actually both those members do sit on the member training group. Councillor Stamp was present and Councillor Siddle, and in fact at that training group at the last meeting we did have figures coming forward regarding the training over previous years, and certainly Cheryl Hughes, Mrs Hughes, did actually circulate figures going back to 2018. Well, yes, it was higher than actually now of the 2,800, it was over 5,000, and I asked for further detail on that. And then subsequently it dwindled. Now, I think the way to deal with this, Chairman, there is, as I moved earlier, the recommendations, Little 1 and Little 2. And Little 2 says that the programme's performance and governance manager is authorised to establish an annual training programme of members in accordance with the approved criteria in consultation with the member training working group. And I think that training group, I'm sure Councillor Siddle will be wanting further meetings, that can look at the training, and there can be through that perhaps a real assessment of perhaps what a training budget could be, bearing in mind what may come out of further discussions with that training group, and certainly report back to Council. I think that would be the way, rather than measured figures, because at first I heard Councillor Foucault say 20,000, then he moderated that a bit with 5,000, and that certainly ties up with something in the past. But I think the member training group is the one ably that's been come into the equation, bearing in mind the deferment of that report from September, and now we're moving forward. That body is the one, including Councillor White's on it. Councillor Helm has a right to be on that training group as well. I think that's the body where all these matters be considered, Chairman, in an appropriate way, and I'm hoping Councillor Siddle might see that as the way forward.
I think the problem, Leader, is that Mr Leslie needs this information to actually produce a budget. And you seem to be suggesting that this figure arrive at a later date. Mr Leslie, when's the latest time that you would need this figure?
I think, Chairman, the figure's unlikely to be significantly material for the budget setting process. Usually we'll look to build in final figures ready for the Strategy and Resources Committee on the, I think, 26th of January this time. However, we of course have supplementary estimates throughout the year, so it can be outside of the budget.
Budgeting, Mr Leslie.
It's not ideal budgeting, Chairman, but I think due to the figures we're talking about, it wouldn't be a significant impact coming forward. So it can be done outside of the normal budget cycle. If it was to be included.
Councillor Fluker, are you happy to withdraw your amendment?
No, but Chairman, I mean the whole purpose of this is everything just seems to be going on the merry-go-round. But Mr Leslie's trying to do his budget. You know, if we increase this to 10,000 or 20 or 30,000 pounds, it's got to be justified, the expense. But what I don't want is, you know, Mr Leslie coming back with all the other problems he's going to face next year, coming back to ask for a supplementary estimate to increase this. Whereas if we cut this budget now, make it a sensible level, he doesn't have to do that. We've got this working group in the background that deals with training. You know, and why? I must think of another word other than the hog tie. But why do we keep hog tying officers?
We used to say, because you've got a budget, you don't have to spend it.
Well, we're not going to lose it. But look, Councillor Channer's absolutely right. You know, in the past we had a massive a member budget, but because members have been here so long, some felt that they knew everything and others felt they didn't need training. I can see Mr. Quelch almost smiling without my glasses off. No, he's grimacing. But, you know, and they were different times, you know, and I really do sympathise with members that have joined this council during the municipal period, and perhaps those that joined in 2019, because I do feel as though the training was lacking in some ways. So, Chairman, you know, the reason why I'm putting this amendment forward is in good faith. It allows us to sort out some proper training, and it gives the officers, you know, Mr. Leslie can put the figure in his budget and then hopefully report back in 12 months' time that there was an underspend of £2,200. But I think we should do what we can to help him, and he should be helped.
So are you prepared to withdraw your amendment and have a firm figure put to S&R on the 27th?
No, Chairman, I'm quite happy to propose now that we make the budget £200 per member, £6,200. We don't have to spend it, and Mr. Leslie doesn't have to come back.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Dewitt, Councillor Skeens, very quickly, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm just at a loss, like I know one or two other members are, at how we can have such a guesstimate as a training figure. I mean, whatever councillors are going to require in the way of training, I don't know. Planning is obviously one, licensing is another. But they must all have fixed costs to do the training of all councillors as in planning or certain councillors as in licensing. Surely it's not beyond the wit of man to go away, work out what needs doing, have a cost against that. They must all be available, the costs against these training items, and then come back with that and say, right, it's actually going to cost 1,000, 10,000, 25. I don't know what it's going to cost, but this is so airy-fairy, I'm not willing to vote on it. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Skeens.
Yes, I just want to support what Councillor Duke said and Councillor Spenceley and others. We need more training. We need much better training than we're getting. We need a bigger budget. Thank you.
Right, we seem to be reopening the debate. Councillor Fleming, Councillor Swain.
Thank you, Chair. Before I made a decision, could we perhaps the figures for the staff training budget could be shared with members? I think that would be quite interesting. Thank you.
I don't know whether we can find those figures at the moment. I'll listen to Councillor Swain first.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, my point is that we're asked to vote on a couple of recommendations which don't say anything about money. The figure of 2,800 is merely a bit of background information. So we can pass these two recommendations and we then await to hear the training programme would amount to as a separate idea, separate report to whoever, PG&A probably.
Thank you. Mrs Fleming, we don't have that information available at the moment. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. I hope I haven't got confused and I'm not repeating anything anyone else has said, but I don't quite see why we can't have the member training working group meet as soon as possible so we actually have a figure we can take to S&R, because there are. Well, I don't know why we need to guess a figure now.
We've got an amendment of 6,200, which I'll now take the vote on. Those in. Yes,
there is nothing on the agenda about voting for a budget on this.
Well,
this is part of the report.
That's correct. I mean, it can be added. You've got an amendment on the table for 6,200. It's got to be voted on with that.
Yeah. I think my advice is that we can take this amendment. So those in favour of the amendment of the training budget for members being 6,200, which is duly seconded, I think, by Councillor Stamp. Miss Bird.
Yes, Chairman. Members, so voting on the amendment as proposed by Councillor Fluker, if you could indicate for, against or abstain, please, starting with Councillor Bassett, please.
Against.
Councillor Bell.
For.
That was 4, Miss Bird.
Yeah, I got that, thank you. Councillor Boyce?
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Chalmer?
Get it over and done with 4.
Councillor Jewick?
For the reasons I just gave, abstain.
Councillor Durham?
4.
Councillor Edwards?
4.
Councillor Mrs Fleming?
4.
Councillor Fluker?
This is for my motion, isn't it?
Your amendment.
No, yeah, but 4.
6,200.
Your amendment.
Councillor Hurd?
4.
Councillor Helm?
4.
Councillor Hume?
Or
Councillor Hull?
4.
Councillor Keys?
4.
Councillor Lagan?
4.
Councillor Morley?
4.
Councillor Nunn?
4.
Councillor Shaughnessy?
4.
Councillor Siddle?
Abstain.
Councillor Skeens?
4.
Councillor Spenceley?
4.
Councillor Stamp?
4.
Councillor Stevens?
Abstain.
So
Councillor
we'll
Wilkes?
put in 3.
4.
6,200.
Councillor Swain?
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs Thompson?
Abstain.
Councillor White?
4.
Chairman, the results of that are 24, 1 against and 6 abstentions.
Thank you. That amendment is carried. Now the substantive motion to council is as the recommendation as in little 1 and in little 2. I think after the approved criteria and budget of 6,200 be inserted, and that becomes the substantive motion. All those in favour? Agreed. Thank you. Right, members, we go on to agenda item 14. Would members like a break?
Yes, please.
Shall we say 9:05? Adjourn till 9:05? We adjourn till. Did you get that, Miss Bird? Right, let's get down and have a Members, we're live again, and we turn to agenda item 14, Area Planning Committee review on pages 77 to 88. Leader.
Pardon me, Chair, my computer's just gone down.
Oh. No, can I just move straight to Mr. Dodson then, Leader?
If you so wish, Chairman.
Well,
actually, I'll do it from the written bit then. I'll try it from here.
Okay.
I'll leave my computer off, Chairman. Area Planning Committees, Chairman. This is to review, as you said, the Planning Committee reviews and confirm whether future approach will include area planning committees or a single committee. The report placed before members considers two aspects: objectives, sound decision making and resource implications, maintaining current ways of working. The area planning committees, as we all know, are 3 in total, cover the whole district, and every ward member can sit on one. What I would say is, Chairman, all members have planning training to sit on our area planning committee, or should do it. We've decided that should be mandatory, so it applies to all members. And the report highlights the take-up by members, gives the percentages. There's a legal requirement that all members have read the papers. 3.4 refers to the PASS report and details how it can provide, PASS and how it can provide high-quality help and advice. And back in 2021, PASS conducted a review of planning committees, how the work, both practically and with good decision-making, could be looked at. As a result of this, a wider number of recommendations emerged in respect of our general operations and working practices. I refer members to para 3.5, which highlight the corporate governance audit by internal auditors in July 2022, and that report did actually go to the the Performance Governance and Audit Committee in July 2022, hence the reason why we're having this tonight as well, Chairman. I draw members' attention to 3.6, which refers to the Council's budget and deficit and a business case about how we run committees. 3.7 refers to findings and regarding the issues of 25 hours of officer time resources needed to sustainably manage arrangements going forward. 3.8 detail of the level of governance, and the past reports highlighted risks which are detailed in the report, Chairman. And also one of those things was regarding a legal officer perhaps should be present, and a single committee would allow that. And I highlight also that the Overview Scrutiny Committee has a work plan item around planning decision process, and there's an Overview Scrutiny interim report of October, including similar findings in respect of member training and capacity that a small core group involved in planning would address. There's recommendations, Chairman, 1 to little 3 on the order paper, that 1, Council reviews the table in 3.8 and notes concerns. 2, Council updates the committee structure and removes area planning committees and replaced with 9-seated planning committee from May 2023, and that's adopting Appendix A. And then little 3, should Council agree to 2, detailed implementation plan with clear updated member call-in process and expectations be brought forward and back to the future council. I don't know if I read my writing right at the end one there, Chairman. That's the best I can do, and I'll try and get into my computer now. Thank you.
Mr. Dodson.
Thank you, Chairman. This paper was prompted following an internal audit of governance that found the Planning Advisory Service report had not been properly considered at Council, and this report brings back the main issues of area planning committees. Whilst that was the prompt, the case for change in our approach to planning committees has become even more compelling over the last 12 months, to the extent that the evidence for change is, in the view of the corporate leadership team, overwhelming. And as a corporate leadership team, we would recommend this change in the strongest of terms. Why is the case for change so compelling? Broadly, national guidance and best practice has moved away from area planning, with members encouraged to think of the whole district and policy when making planning decisions, rather than acting as ward members. Additionally, the review of development management service that has taken place has a key finding that the area planning model is contributing to inefficiency and resource pressure in the service at a time when it's difficult to recruit and retain staff, to manage planning processes, to the extent that the situation is dire and must be rectified through a number of measures, including a single planning committee. There are a number of governance and operational concerns surrounding our current area planning committee model, and these are given in high level at section 3.8 of the report, including a budget saving we would be able to make if our model changes. Overall, the report recommends replacing area planning with a 9-seat planning committee as per the terms of reference set out in Appendix A. This would still retain district planning for matters currently referred there. I would like to clarify that within the table at 3.8 of the report, no final report and conclusions have been brought forward from the ONS planning decision making item yet, so we can't say whether this would have supported area planning or a single committee. To help members to further understand the case for change, we've invited Stephen Barker from the Planning Advisory Service, the key advisory body for planning services across the country, to provide some further information as an independent expert. Through you, Chairman, I'd like to invite Stephen to speak and to ask the question to Stephen. Could you please explain the benefits of a single planning committee for Malden District Council and why it would be such a benefit to members, officers and residents? Thank you, Chairman.
Please, Mr. Barker.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much, Mr. Dawson, and thank you, Councillor, as well. As you probably know from receiving the report that was done back in 2021, Planning Advisory Service is part of the Local Government Association. So we do a number of these reviews across the country. I think we do about 30. I had a quick look at how many we've done in a year. We've looked at 30 planning committees in the last year. We've delivered around 50 lots of training to councils, and I've done about 50 sessions with committee chairs as well. So just on the back of that, you can see how many planning committees I've had to look at in the wealth of time that we've been looking at them. So every time we look at a planning committee, we look at it really under like 5 basic principles. So that's around, is the process of decision making clear for the public? Is it making the best opportunity to be accessible to the public? Is the council making the best use of its resources in making decisions at committee? Is it presenting a confident and professional approach to decision making by the council? And actually, is it making good, clear decisions? So they're our sort of base rock, if you like, for what we look through when we go through. One of the things that I've tried to do here is just, I've put a table together of some comparable authorities. So we've used some of the SIP for nearest neighbours authorities, which I believe has been circulated in the packs as your information sheets. So as you can kind of see from here, there's just a raft of authorities who are of a similar, well, who SIP for terms, nearest neighbours are of a similar size, if you like, or similarities anyway. And I've kind of seen, you can see from the sort of Malden approach, how sort of different it is to the norm, I would say. And it's just an opportunity just to sort of highlight this. So, from my work generally across, and the team's work within PAS, I would think there's probably less than 5% of local authorities, local planning authorities who are running area committees. Now, most of those who run area committees do it for a reason. Now, most of that reason is because of the size of the geography, or even the volume of planning applications that they're seeing. Now, the reason that we made the recommendation in the report when we came to see the authority, or came to see the committees, was Malden's volume of applications and geographical size probably doesn't lend itself to either of those arguments, I think. And so there is a real, the resources requirement to be able to cover area committees for a local authority is larger, but also the volume of work that is also taken to aid the councillors in doing their role on committees is large as well. So you can start to see it's sort of using it from both sides, of the resources of both the council and also the resourcing of the time of the councillors as well. We very much recognise that there are a lot of different ways to run a planning committee, and there are a lot of variety, if you like, across the country. But I say the fact that area committees are used so sparingly, I think, is sort of indicative in itself. One of the things that we did say, we made a recommendation of 9, I think, committee members in the report. As you can kind of see from the comparable local authorities, if you like, within the table, we recommended 9. Now, we say somewhere between about 11 and 9, and it's kind of for an authority really to sort of work out how best that fits. And you can see from the table that quite a few are a bit higher than that. That's often for a few reasons. Sometimes that's about making sure that the democratic representation of parties is allowed within the committee. So, but principally we came to our number between 11 and 9. We did a big survey with a number of councillors and officers across the country who work on planning committee, and that was what their recommendation was, what a good number of committee members was for a committee. So that's kind of where we came with the 9 figure, and we kind of erred on the 9 figure, if you like, for the recommendation, because of the size of the council, if you like. 31 members in the council. We think that was a sort of that end of it, if you like, compared to say like the Lichfield, for example, who are on there for like 53 members on the council. So, that's sort of where that 9 figure came from, I suppose. You kind of asked me just to sort of say what are the benefits really. So I suppose looking at both members, officers and residents. So principally the benefits for the members is actually being on a planning committee is actually quite a challenge in undertaking the role that you have as a ward councillor and as an advocate for your area. So because of the challenges around predetermination for sitting on a planning committee, if having a smaller number of members on the committee means that ward members can take their role to represent the community at the committee, so they can actually front for them in the committee as they progress. Planning committees are quite a complex thing. Most people, if they're unlucky, don't have to go to very many committees in their lifetime. You walk into it and it's such a judicial process, if you like. It's actually quite daunting. So having that ward council role to front becomes quite a strong advocacy role and kind of a key role to take. So not only does it allow sort of, the councillors to do their job as advocates, if you like, rather than decision makers which are making decisions not just for the ward but for the wider council. And even as a ward councillor sitting on a committee, they've still got a role to take that wider viewpoint, if you like. Also, planning changes quite a lot, so being kept up to date and being kept informed. It's great to see that you were talking earlier about mandatory training for committee members. Our advice is committee members should be trained annually, at least, on a mandatory level, because the planning process changes so much, both within the policies that the council has, but also nationally as well. So having that ability to keep a lower number of councillors updated and trained becomes quite a key element, if you like, to be able to move things forward. So also trying to keep consistency between committees as well is a big challenge, because there has to be consistent decision making made across the council. If you've got area committees, there's a much bigger role for the chairs of the committees to be able to keep consistency across, and the officers to work as well within that. So it just that you can see where the increasing time and resourcing comes into it. Benefits to officers you've asked for as well. So obviously, as we've talked about, reducing the requirements regarding the administration of multiple committees, but also the cost of producing the necessary committee papers that go with that. Also the cost of officer time to be able to support the committee. So actually making sure that the officers are available to be able to talk to committee members about cases. And also just to be able to bring that work that has to be done to be able to bring a consistency across approaches as well between the committees as well. And also you mentioned residents. Now, having that ward councillor there as an ability to advocate for, as I've mentioned, is a sort of a key role, I think, within this. And it also allows ward councillors to actually sort of campaign for as well, whereas they can't do that when they're on the planning committee, because they've got to be able to show that they're not having a predetermined view when they sit there. So that role, I think, is actually such a key role as well, but it almost feels like it's a shame to lose that. And actually, by having the smaller number of councillors on a committee, on a single council, then that advocate role becomes larger and much more apparent for the community as well. There is a lot of challenge sometimes about moving from an area committee, just to say, to go to a sort of a smaller number and a single council regarding a role of democracy is lost, I suppose, within this. You have to remember that planning committee is not a democratic process. It's actually a regulatory function. The democracy in it is coming by the fact that there are councillors who are elected from the council who sit onto the committee. And the fact that actually, I'd say 95% of councillors are running one committee kind of has a slight argument that it's still working, if you like, and that democracy is still it has a part to play in it by the fact that it's the wider council that's making the decision. Something else I just wanted to note as well, when I was having a look at when the council asked me to come and just present, I had a little look at what your appeals performance is. And there's another slide here, if you could just move on. The reason I've highlighted this is something that we see quite a lot from councils that have got multiple committees, and that their appeals losses are actually quite high. Some of that's to do with the fact that it's hard for consistent decision making to happen. The reason I highlight this is there is a cut-off mark of 10%. So if you lose more than 10% of your major applications on appeal, then there's an option for government to take away decision-making planning powers from a local authority. So at the moment, the council is running about 7.7%. Now, on my maths of this, if you were to carry on in the rate you were, I think you'll probably just be underneath the 10% mark. Whereas actually, if you lost another one on appeal, you're going to be over that. So the government potentially could be looking to put intervention on the council. The reason I mention this is because it's consistency about decision making. I haven't looked at the reasons on the appeals report, and it's something that we very much could look at, but it's something I think the council should very much be aware of. And as some of this comes to this idea of how well the committees, particularly around majors, are making those decisions. Could you move on to the next slide, please? Just in summary, there's a couple of things that we can do as the LGA, as PAS and the LGA, that could kind of try and help the council. So our recommendation, as was made back in 2021, was to move from a multiple area committee to a single committee. Now, if you do want to go down that process, we can help. What I suggest we do is we can either put a councillor here from another authority on your action advisory group if you want to help aid that, or even a former head of planning to sit on that to sort of aid and give advice as it goes through. We can take a subsequent review if you do move down to a single committee to see how it's working.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but could you? Okay, sorry. Right, I've been told that I'm out of order. Carry on, please.
Sorry, Chairman. And just say we can offer some training as well to the council. And then regarding the appeals work, there's also we can actually do some stuff around understanding how those issues, if there are underlying issues around the appeals. Again, we can deliver training to the council as well regarding the committee members, and also if it does deteriorate, you can actually get to the point where we can advise you regarding your discussions with the Secretary of State. We do this regularly. And just to say, all of that is at no cost to the authority, because that's part of the work that we're subsequently done. So I'm kind of more than happy to take questions as you wish on any of those points. Thank you.
Is there anybody that wishes to ask a question?
Just go to the debate.
Sorry?
Debate.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, Chairman, I just, based on I just want to focus on the report at the moment, Chair, because I fear that this might take some time. And Chairman, I just wanted a point of clarity over paragraph 3.3. And in paragraph 3.3, which the leader quite rightly highlighted to us, about the legal requirement that all members should have read and thoroughly reviewed the paperwork. Well, Chairman, I'm very uncomfortable about that statement in the report, and I have had an exchange of emails with the monitoring officer regarding this, and he's quite rightly directed me to R on the application of Hill versus Cornwall, county council, but that actually deals with the inadequacies of an officer's report. So obviously members couldn't make an informed decision. RV Selby is getting very old now, and it covers quite a lot of things, and I couldn't actually see specifically where it led on members not being not having read the reports. But my biggest concern, Chairman, which takes this argument, and in fact paragraph 3.3, in a completely different direction. I wrote to the monitoring office on the 26th of September, following a district planning committee meeting, which dealt with an application in Malden Road, Wood and Mortimer, Essex. And I brought to the attention of the monitoring officer that clearly from what members said, they had not read the report. And that in some instances, they were predetermined. So now we've got officers that haven't read the report, and members that haven't read the report, predetermination, and I believe discrimination as well. And all I got back, and I'm happy to circulate this, all I got back from the monitoring office was basically saying what each of these items meant. So there was absolutely no action taken by the monitoring officer. They didn't even speak to these members. So this business about there's a legal requirement to read reports, we either enforce this or we don't. But based on the documentary evidence that I've just referred to, we clearly don't. So what I'd like to ask the monitoring officer is, on behalf of his office, are you going to make sure that we are legally compliant going forward? Or are you just going to say, well, if you don't read the reports, you're subject to a judicial review? Because I can't find anywhere where council's been subject to a judicial review on those terms. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Quelch wishes to say something.
It's axiomatic that council reports should be read by members. The Cornwall case that I sent to you, Councillor Fluker, talks about the importance of the adequacy of reports. So it follows, it's self-evident that members should read it. Now, I'm not quite sure what Councillor Fluker, Chairman, is wanting me to do. Is he wanting me after each planning committee to cross-examine each member to see whether they pass a quiz in relation to each report? It's quite clear that if members don't read the reports and seek to understand them, then yes, there is a possibility that a judicial review could be brought. But it's not possible for me. There's nothing in the code of conduct that requires explicitly members to read officers' reports. But it's axiomatic that they should read those reports. And I've given advice to members, and I think members will remember. I sent an email round recently, which surely Councillor Fluker will remember, where I said that if councillors haven't had time to read reports, then they should abstain from that particular matter. And if they haven't got time, they should actually select which particular matters they feel they should read and leave the others. So I think I've already addressed that. So I'm not quite sure what more Councillor Fluker would like me to do other than an interview of members about their performance in reading reports.
I think Councillor Fluker has made his point.
No, Chairman.
Fluker,
Can I just come back briefly?
The debate is on the whole paper, not just on 3.3.
But Chairman, 3.3, I mean, as a member, I feel quite threatened because it says one thing. I wrote to the monitoring office highlighting that members have not complied with the requirement to read reports. Now, I would have thought, in the best interest of this council, the monitoring officer should have listened to the tape, and I actually directed them, I think, at the time when they needed to listen, and at the very, very least, sent out another reminder. But as far as...
Councillor Fluker, please, we are not debating individual...
No, I'm just trying to give weight to this legal thing. And as you said to me, Mr. Quelch in Morrison's, I look forward to seeing you in the chamber, and I always...
Yeah. Councillor Durham. I've got your councillor schemes.
Yeah, thank you,
In a
thank
long
you
list.
very much indeed. Can I just start off by actually supporting what Councillor Fluker has just said? It's quite clear, sitting in some meetings, that there are members that don't read it. And if you go back in time to when we had the papers sent out to us in an envelope with an elastic band round them, I recall several meetings where you could look around the table, the benches, and you could see that the papers still had the elastic band and were so neat they quite clearly hadn't been opened. So it used to go on, and I'm sure it still does. But on this very subject, members want to and should be able to represent their residents and parish councils at planning meetings. But by having a single planning committee doesn't prevent that at all. In fact, it's reinforced. Because members that are speaking strongly and banging the table or doing whatever they want to do for attention can do so without the fear of being accused of predetermination, because they're not voting. I will give you a case in point at the Essex County Council that has a single planning committee. Councillor Playle, who represents the Rivenhall division, has the Rivenhall incinerator in his division, which clearly from his parish councils and all his residents are absolutely opposed to. However, when it was put to the planning committee, there was no real valid reason why permission shouldn't be granted. There wouldn't have been very many valid planning reasons, but he had to support the wishes of his residents. So he was able to go to that committee and be as expansive as he wanted, extolling the reasons why this incinerator shouldn't be given planning permission. But of course he wasn't put in the invidious position of having to vote against officers' recommendations and vote against something where there was no reason. So members would be able to stand up and represent their individual cases in support of their parish councils, in support of their residents, and be as vocal as they want, as I said, without this sword of Damocles of an accusation of predetermination hanging over their head. You've seen advice from the Planning Advisory Service, the LGA, the auditors, that this is best practice. The other matter that is absolutely relevant, when devolution comes along, and we will probably be part of the North Essex group of councils and therefore sharing services, we won't be able to share planning services if we've still got area committees, because none of our partner authorities have area committees. So that it's going to come sooner or later, whether we like it or not, and whatever we say today. So, Chairman, I absolutely support a single planning committee where the members can be trained, they can be regularly kept up to date with the legislation. And as Mr. Barker has just said, we have to be, it gives you the opportunity to be advocates for your residents as loudly as you want, without this issue of predetermination. And, Chairman,
3 minutes.
Yeah, well, okay, Chairman. I'm quite happy to sit down because I think I've made my point. Thank you.
Councillor Fleming.
Thank you, Chair. Previously, I've been dead against moving to a single committee. I think the thing that's changed it for me is our current staffing crisis. Planners, committee clerks. I mean, I am very concerned about what is going to happen, after May. The situation is likely to get worse. So, if members don't want to do this, they need to do something to, well, I don't know what that can be, but that something needs to happen, because we just don't have the resource to run 3 planning committees. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Siddle.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think a lot of what I want to say has already been said, and I understand that members feel the need to be and represent their wards. One of my thing is, though, is we are the planning authority and we're not a parish council or a town council, and we've got to understand that. I know people are passionate about planning, and that's a lot of the reasons why some of us are councillors. It's not the driving force for me to be a councillor, but I know it's the driving force for a lot of other people to be a councillor. So I can understand that in terms of where we are, we're still at a very precarious point in terms of how people feel, and we are very split as a council on this particular decision. I would like to put forward a recommendation to change little 2 so that we change the number to a 15-seat planning committee with 8 substitutions. So therefore, what we could have is we could have substitutes if someone wanted to be on that particular planning committee. I also have a second recommendation that if little 2 fails, that we postpone this for 6 months until after the next election. So do I have a seconder for that?
I've got hands going up, but I don't know whether they're seconding you. Well, no, are you seconding Councillor Siddle? Because you're
seconding the idea of a committee of 15.
Right.
And the 8.
So that is an amendment that we have, and I'll take the main report and the amendment as one debate to make things easier. Councillor Lagan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm going to come out from completely the opposite side of the fence. Devolution, we don't know what that's going to be like, so I've got no idea what we're talking about that at this moment in time. I think you've also got, with the report, I've got a few problems with the report and a couple of questions to ask on that. Under 3.2, it talks about 90% of members having training. That's 27.9 members out of 31. Okay, so we're not that far from the mark as well. When we talked about reading the reports, officers' reports, 3.3 is burden. The wording is burden on members to read. I don't see it as a burden. You know, they're very complex things to read, and once you get your teeth into them, that's actually quite good. I thank Mr. Barker. Thanks for him for his presentation, but I bought a stylist to recommend changes to my house, and I didn't take the recommendations because they didn't fit. 3.7, page 78. Members agree to a transformation review of the planning service to improve operational efficiency and resilience for the service delivery in the future. When is something that I'm interested with the date when we actually did that, because I can't remember, and I'm keeping a very strict record on the things that I'm looking at now. This will be very, and I apologise if this comes out rather blunt, officer resources on page 80, CLT, that's your job. That's your job to sort that out, That's not my job, that's your job. We're members. If it's not working, come up with a strategy and put it to us as members so that we can support you. Page 80 talks about budget savings, and I'm not going to go with all the fear about predetermination because we've had that thrown down our necks all the time, and I think that what we do, we actually do really well, and I was really proud to see that report coming on with Mr. Barker put of these planning committees are more than 100%, because it means that everybody's actually sitting there listening to debate, representing their members in their thinking, but actually using the legal framework to make decisions. And we don't have that number of appeals, as say 7.7. That's not 10%. But this was the thing. When it's S&R, in closing, S&R had cost savings levied, and it was rejected that we should take that as one planning committee. It didn't make the cut, and I have the chair over here who sanctioned that. So it says here, budget savings. Reducing from 3 area planning committees to one committee would contribute £21,409 per annum and a reoccurring budget savings. Okay, so 21,409 is equivalent to 690 quid and 61 pence per year per member, £13.28 per week to have everybody go into a committee to actually listen and to represent and, as I said, make decisions in a legal framework, or £1.89 per day. I don't think that's enough to take that away. We also, in closing, there's 2 points in closing. The implications on the report, and I thank the officers for the report, because I'm reading these reports with absolute laser vision nowadays, now that I've started to understand the implications if we don't get these decisions right. It talks about no internal customer change, applications will be processed in expected timeframes, fairness, consistency, may approve overall customer experience, may. If it said it would by bam, 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 I wouldn't be standing here arguing to keep the area committees. And planning's not political. Why 9? Why 15? Have 31. If we're going to do it once, just have 31 members. Yeah.
Let's break it down into 3 and you can do an area.
Yeah. No, but I say that, you know, it's good that we've looked at it. I don't think the cost savings are enough. The emails that have come flooding in today, the people have knocked on my door, on my house, and have said, Chair, about this thing. So it is an emotive issue. I've pushed that to one side and I've looked at the fact of the matter. We're better off at this moment in time sticking with what we've got, and maybe in 6-12 months when there is a new administration and a lot of us won't be here, then bring that to the table, make the decision and have a decision for the next 4 years that represents the people.
Thank you, Councillor Lagan.
Thank you.
Councillor Stamp.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I'm a little bit more concentrating on where it says officer resource. And there's a great big long list where it says reminding officers to report deadlines, chasing officers to report deadlines. And rather than going through it all, I mean, I put it in highlighted, obviously, officers require better training. If they're not putting everything to committee and they're not giving it to the committee clerks, why should that committee clerk have to chase the individual officers? We all have to work with deadlines and within deadlines. One second thing, the gentleman who did the presentation, and you please forgive me, I'm rubbish at names, Steve Barker. Just for one thing, Chairman, I thought I would check some of the facts and the information on here because I'm a great one for believing and double checking. And I immediately went to Richmondshire. And the information there, and it says there is 8 councillors per committee on the planning committee. Yeah. Well, I actually looked at their website and there's 9. Richmond together is 5 members, the Conservatives 3 and the Green and the Independents is 1 with 1 vacant. To me that makes 9. So I'm actually questioning the accuracy of the report. I could go on but I ran out of time today. I think it's for everybody, it's undemocratic to stop, and I know he turned around and said it's nothing to do with democracy, or somebody did. It is democracy. Our residents expect us. I mean, I'm going to say about Councillor Skeens, when somebody turned around and said something like, you know, you can't speak, or I can't remember exactly what he said. And I think when Councillor Skeens and I go to a planning committee, we very, very rarely agree. And that's what makes the debate. So I've got no queries and qualms about not being able to speak in my own ward. I trust my own judgment. I go to planning training. I listen and read the officers' reports. And I don't see it's a hardship to reading any papers. I mean, many of us today have spent God knows all day reading every piece of detail, Chairman. And finally, you'll be pleased to know, there are other things which I won't go on because other members have got something to say. It says impact on customers, okay, at the bottom, implications. No external customer change. Applications would be processed in the expected timescales. There would be change. Dengie residents would have to, if they want to speak at any committee, would have to come up here. And I also don't agree with the political makeup of it. We're not supposed to be political. Who says who's going to sit on that committee? We all know what's going to happen after the elections, and people are naive if they think that that presentation is going to solve everybody's problems, because I certainly don't, and I will not be supporting the officers' recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Stamp. Members, this is going to be a long debate, so would you please not repeat, or try not to repeat, what other members have said? Councillor Hull.
Thank you very much. It's always a bit worrying when something as important as this comes just before Christmas. So they always will unaware. To me, again, I'm sorry I'm repeating it, but it's so undemocratic. It's to me, it's what we all come on the committee for. It's part of our being here, and we're people, local people, and that's what we fight for, is what we want in our country, and our part of the country. I'm really against it, and I'm really sad that it's been brought up.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Skeens.
Thank you. I'm going to be brutally honest here and tell you that I hate planning. I find it confusing, difficult, deeply frustrating. It's often a hiding to nothing because the system is so biased towards developers. Going with this proposal could make most councillors' lives easier. But I think we should keep the system we have. It feels more democratic. It's closer to the people affected. Burnham people, for example, prefer to attend decisive planning meetings in Burnham where their built environment actually is where they actually live. Pulling it all into a 9-person central committee in Malden will just serve to alienate more people, increasing suspicions about what is going on behind closed doors, or at least doors that are harder to open because it involves a 1-hour round trip plus the meeting. It is another barrier to public participation, another barrier to the feeling of openness in a world of confusion and suspicion. To my mind, let me go to the next point. To me, democracy is really important in planning. I say this in the knowledge that some people don't think that it is and use the argument to support the destruction of the area committees. As we have just heard from Mr. Barker, the whole point of having councillors on committees, on the area committees, is to ensure that planning is democratic and is seen to be democratic, even if the decisions have to be guided by policy, which of course itself is created democratically. And my understanding is that we can advocate at area planning if we declare we won't vote. The more local that planning meetings are, the better. The more planning training and the better planning training, the better. The area committees are a rare thing and a good thing. We should be proud of them. Existing concerns can be addressed by better training about the law, the appeals process, our own policies particularly, and the risk of predetermination. It ain't broke, don't fix it.
Thank you, Councillor Keys.
Thank you, Councillor Chairman. I'm a businessman and, yeah, obviously I'm here to save money. But 95% of my inbox is all to do with planning. Unlike my fellow ward member, it is one of the main reasons I'm on the planning. I might be quiet at these sort of meetings, but if you come to North West, I'm certainly very vocal at North West. And I'll be careful of what I say here, but what happens in a back street in Burnham, have I really got any interest in a loft conversion? No more than someone in Burnham has got any interest in a conservatory in Rookery Lane in Great Totham. And I've got not a lot, I work full time, I know a lot of us here do. To come here, we could be sitting here with 14 applications. 13 of them might be to do with Burnham, Southminster, some other ward. The last one might be to mine. I've got to sit here and listen to all that, vote on it, and I'm sorry, I'm totally dead against that. Thank you.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo what I've heard from Councillor Stamplagan, Skeens and Councillor Hull. But I just want to speak very briefly on the role of overview and scrutiny on this, because I think it's very relevant. And I'd actually like to thank Councillor Fluker for his motions, because what they have led to is really quite an intense and in-depth piece of work being done by officers on behalf of overview and scrutiny to do exactly the things that Councillor Skeens mentioned, to improve training, to improve policy, to improve the way that the current system works. Because there's always a need for improvement. There's not such a difference between appeals lost by a delegated level and member level. But these improvements that officers have worked really hard on for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee certainly do not entail cutting the area committees and having one committee. Thank you.
Councillor Swain.
Thank you, Chairman. I certainly don't think we should be sort of preempting and preparing for being amalgamated, and that's hardly a reason. When it comes to the matters that Councillor Keys mentioned, we're talking about decisions which, major decisions are going to go to the district planning. Significant decisions would be for this area committee. The question then comes down to the individual specific household applications and so on, which are more a matter of delegated responsibility to officers and dealings with ward members and discussion about call-ins. So that, provided there's an adequate decision on system on call-ins, then even the most minor planning application could be dealt with if the member was prepared to call it in. On the question of planning officers, that is an entirely separate issue. I think we're obviously so badly understaffed on planning that that is a separate issue to be addressed. And when it comes to the numbers on the committee, that comes down to why I seconded Councillor Siddle's amendment to this. I do think a committee of 15 would allow not only for the political balance that we have to have, but also for geographical balance across the district. And although this is being portrayed, and there's a lot of the people who've approached members and complained about it, seeing it as quite inevitably as a cost-saving measure. I don't see it as that at all. I think the amount of money involved is not great. It is a matter of having consistency and a core, not a large core, who are dealing with the planning matters in what should we say, a rigorous and consistent way that the people can see that it is operating consistently. And as far as one of the other comments, I think from Councillor Skeens is concerned, arguing or having completely different views at these area committees tends to mean that people are voting the way they want to vote, rather than paying enough attention to planning law and the LDP and the council's policies. There shouldn't be all that much scope. So I would very much. I did vote in favour of keeping the area committees when this came up 2 years ago, but I'm quite persuaded now that we should move to a single committee, provided there are adequate details, and this is the recommendation 3 about things like call-ins and geographical spread and this sort of thing.
Thank you, Councillor Swain. Councillor Spenceley.
Thank you, Chair. So, what I want to say is that whilst I think there is arguably a need for a reform of our planning decision-making process here, and I do understand the arguments regarding ward member advocacy, I also feel that this is not the right proposal, which is evidenced by the fact that we're sitting in here trying to do something really important on the hoof now, which I don't feel is right at all. I feel this is not the right proposal, nor at the right time. If we are to consider moving to a single committee, it would require more than 9 members, in my opinion, which has already been said. Political balance alone is not appropriate here. And as Councillor Bell said, ONS have already started to do a huge piece of work on planning and decision-making reform. And I do feel that's been completely overlooked and sidelined in this here tonight. An argument to support this proposal has been made along the lines of ward members act as ward members in planning committees currently, rather than in the interests of the district. If that's so, can anyone here please tell me why there appears to be a presumption that this would change under the arrangements recommended this evening? I don't believe it would. Planning process reform at this council, given all the current circumstances, and there are really some current circumstances which I'm not even going to discuss here right now because I don't think it's appropriate, requires significant workup. I think we haven't got the detail. It isn't here, and I don't think it's appropriate for us to stand here in the week before Christmas at whatever it is on the clock now and try and come up with something that's going to be satisfactory to take forward. For a change of this magnitude, real consultation with our towns and parishes to ensure proper representation going forward is also essential. They are our consultees, and we do need to be at least talking to them first. This appears to me to be a bit of a rush job, pushed forward in the last meeting before Christmas, and it seems to have served to cause nothing more than further hostility and division, and that does concern me. In some ways, I am reluctant to propose another working group. and everyone knows, and I'm sure from what Councillor Fluke said earlier, I am one of the core of people who's at almost every working, always at every working group. But it seems to me that this will likely be the only way of achieving proper and robust consultation with members on this issue. Therefore, I would like to propose the setting up of a working group on the planning decision-making process. And I also would like to say that that would then give us something to leave the new members who come in perhaps in May 2023, something that they can then consider as new members. But that, I just put that forward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Thompson.
Actually, Chairman, I thought Councillor White was before me. I thought her hand was up before mine. But anyway, okay, thank you. It's funny, that term, regulatory, not democratic, I say at all these kinds of meetings and I just get blank stares. But I'm afraid it's a fact. This is not, and in many ways I regret it, this is not about what our residents want. We are here to follow a regulatory process, just like licensing. Well, we used to do that with 3. We still can do that with 3. We're here to consider the whole district, not our ward. We're here to consider the LDP, which applies to the whole district, not just our ward. Not to be just interested in what goes on immediately around us. I'm afraid it is blindingly obvious quite often at my committee Northwest that people haven't read the reports, haven't taken them in. And I'm afraid, our last meeting was 2 call-ins and they both went with the officer recommendation and it was over in 23 minutes. I think, well, what's the point?
Sorry, I thought you'd finished.
No, I'm sorry, I hadn't. I was drawing breath. And I'm afraid one of those applications, it was blindingly obvious that, the report had not been read or understood. Sorry, I'm afraid that, I often see reports have not been read or have not been understood. It does happen, and a lot of members here read everything diligently. But I'm afraid it's not universal. And one other thing is nearly all the overturns, certainly at my committee, but I think across the council as well, they are overturns for approval. So these decisions don't ever go to appeal. Thank you.
Councillor Dewick.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, Councillor Skeens has very decently said basically everything that I wanted to say in the first half of what I was going to say, but I've got my half yet to go, so sorry, we'll have to put up with that. Like Councillor Keys, the bulk of contact I get from the general public is on planning. Yesterday it was somebody who phoned me up to say, what on earth do I do to get my planning application accepted by the officers? It just keeps being rejected. A few weeks ago it was, what do I do to prevent my neighbour building a monstrosity in his back garden that's going to affect my life? And so it goes on all the time. But unlike Councillor Mrs Thompson, there is, I believe, democracy to be had in planning without any detriment to the planning process at all. I'd like to give you 3 examples. The first one was a few months ago with Burnham Rugby Club, who wanted to build an extension on the existing sports centre down on the playing fields at Burnham on Crouch. The officers recommended refusal because of poor design and poor architectural quality. Members took the view that actually the existing building is poor design and poor architectural quality, so really it didn't make a lot of difference. So consequently we approved the application. I don't believe there was any loss to anyone in that. There's no loss to planning department, no loss to local residents or anything. It was a sensible decision made by members, which would not have been made by officers. Another one was in Tillingham, Vicarage Lane recently, where an old conversion of a shed to a dwelling many years ago, the applicants wanted to demolish it and build a period design cottage. Again, the conservation officer was in favour of it, but planning officers were against, but members took the view that it was going to be good for the area, good for the applicants, no reason not to approve. So we approved it. The third one is very recent, and actually it's an officer decision that was made last week. The application was for the Athola community at Bradwell, which I suspect most, if not all members here, know what it is, where it is, why it is. The application was for the erection of a wind turbine of up to 32 metres overall height to tip. The Athola community, East End Road, Bradwell-on-Sea. Officers refused that application. I won't go through all the reasons, but the first reason is the development as a result of the height, size and position of the wind turbine proposed would be a visually incongruous element within this flat, open, rural, coastal landscape to the detriment of the character and appearance of the area, contrary to policies S8, D4 and D1 of the approved Malvern District Local Development Plan. There are three more reasons for refusal, which are all basically around the same thing. Now, members all laughed just now, because they know, like I know, if you stand at the Athola community and look southeast, there are 10 130 metre high turbines dominating the landscape. Turn 180 degrees and look across the river, and at St Osyth there are another 6. Look east, and there are hundreds of the monstrosities out in the sea. Out in the sea. Clearly, members in this case know far, far more than the officers concerned, who could never have visited the site and must not know anything about the Athola community or its application. That is, as somebody has just said, local knowledge. We need it in our planning. We need to keep the system we've got. As somebody else said, it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How can I follow that? But I will quickly follow it. Just to say that I chair Strategy and Resources, and we had a report in Appendix 3 come to us. PGA committee recommended that we not remove the area planning committees, and my committee also advised that, or agreed to keep Appendix 3, which was to retain the 3 area committees. It was only saving $64,000 a year. Officers recommended that it stay on the Appendix 3, that it wasn't worth rejecting, and yet here we are again. We won't go with Strategy and Resources. We won't go with PGA. We'll bring it to council again. So that's the first thing. So then we move on here, and thank you to Mr. Barclay for giving his report. But my question is, we go on about the majors. Well, majors aren't decided by area committees, they're decided by districts. That's got nothing to do with us. On the minors, could officers and Mr. Barker tell me the percentage difference between officer delegated decisions that are allowed at appeal as opposed to area planning committees that are allowed at appeal? Because I'm pretty sure that the percentage of area planning committee overturns is less than officer overturns. That's the first one. The second one is the cost at $64,000. That is amazing value. 3 committees and it only cost $64,000. The residents over 3 years, the residents I've spoken to think this is brilliant value. I'm interested that some of the members don't think they listen to their residents. They don't listen to their parish councils. I do. I don't always vote with them, but I listen to them. I was elected to stand up and make the difficult decisions. Yep, my decisions aren't always popular, but I've always done what I think to be right. I've always stood up and I've always voted the way I think's correct. And as for North West, I now have my LDP book with me with my planning policies, and it's funny. But when we've got policies to approve them, like employment's important, the officers are like, no, we don't like that policy. We're going with this policy. It's the members' gift to use the policies as we see fit. So I'm going to wait and hear what the percentages are, because I think these are right. And with devolution, the area planning committees will be gone anyway. Let's make the most of them while we can. And my last point is, we go on about democracy. I have never, ever voted on planning along a political party line. I have voted under my own decision, and it's never political. And I don't think any member votes on planning along a party line. For one, it's illegal, and two, we make our own decisions. It's vital we keep this. It's vital for members, and it's vital for members of the public. And it's so important we keep it. Every 4 years this comes up because officers don't like it. I mean, we've got a thing here later on where they want more planning resources. Well, if we're going to do away with the area committees, we don't need any more planning officers, do we? Because everything will be under-delegated. So let's keep them.
I think Mr. Dodson wants to say something on those last or your earlier comments, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's come up a couple of times, and it was just to clarify the point around the Appendix 3 that was referred to strategy and resources. That was not included as one of the savings, but as I explained at the start of this report, the report was prompted by the internal audit report as well as the wider efficiencies. So it's a much broader point than the budget saving, and it wasn't appropriate to bring it forward on two fronts, hence why it wasn't brought forward as a saving, it was brought forward through this route. So it's a clarification that there's not a conflict between the two issues.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. Councillor Helm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A bit of history. I've been chairman of Latchington Parish Council and chairman of the Danger Group Parishes, which, as you know, is a huge amount of process. Their most concern is planning. And if we look back, the people that vote for us, their most important thing to them is their house and their surrounding area. And that's why I think we should keep the area planning committees. I've also invested £2,000 in keeping it at Burnham, so we have the recording and the internet facility to run it there. So we can get rid of the council officers and save money and use that equipment to have meetings anywhere. Thank you.
Councillor Hurd.
Thank you, Chairman. Goodness me, what a lot of electioneering going on tonight. I'm very pleased to hear Councillor White advocate independence. That was the first point. So I will be brief. I'll just go down the bullet points here. I don't think we should wait. I think that we should decide with ourselves as experienced councillors rather than having all the new councillors come in and decide for that. I think Mr. Barker makes some very good points. I don't think there's going to be any lack of democratic representation. It's still going to be allowed. Members can go along. Actually, I would welcome the opportunity to go to a meeting and speak my mind openly, either in support of it or not in support of it. And I think as a ward member, that's exactly what we should be doing. I think that there are far too many planning matters referred to the committees, and I think that there are too many decisions that are too varied. I think the meetings are often cancelled. Indeed, Central was cancelled yesterday due to lack of business. My mailbox is full of councillors who are not happy, not members of the public. And I don't think that will change. I agree there should be no political balance, but I would also support Councillor Siddle's proposal for 15. Thank you.
Councillor Stevens, who's the last speaker.
Thank you.
You've had a go.
Not on this item.
I thought, what was the 3.3 business? Sorry, Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard from Councillor Dewick and Councillor White about various sort of anecdotal things that have happened in planning meetings, but I didn't hear anything that wouldn't happen just the same in the new setup. So there will still be, you've got one policy that suggests we should say yes, and you've got another one that says we should say no. We'll always have that, and that's why people have to look and debate and examine and put the weighted balance and all the rest of it onto a decision. It doesn't make any difference what kind of committee it is. Yeah? And Councillor Dewick spoke about decisions at Bradwell. Well, I can't see that decision would be any different if it's in an area committee or a district committee or a centralised committee. You've got an officer's recommendation, you don't think it makes sense, so you overturn it. It's just the same. We've heard about what a very long way away Burnham is, half an hour to Malden. I get that. It's half an hour for me from Tolsbury as well. It's no different. It's not like a different world, south of the river. I have been to Burnham. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Please, members, time.
I think Councillor Fleming made a very good point that we have too few planners. It may or may not be, excuse me, good value for money. It could be better value for money, but we haven't got enough people and we don't seem to be able to buy enough people. And we will end up having to spend more because we'll be getting in consultants. So I don't think it's just about the money. I think we need to have more than 9, maybe 12, maybe 15. I think having a political balance as well as a geographic is important. I sit on North Western and there are 7 Conservatives and 2 Independents. And that does feel unbalanced to me at times. Now, of course, if all the Conservatives vote in one direction and the Independents vote the other way, everyone will say, I was voting with, well, that has happened. Everyone will say that had nothing to do with it.
I object to those accusations.
Sorry, can I say what I want to say, please? Everyone will say it didn't have anything to do with it, and I can't prove otherwise, and I'm not going to try and prove otherwise. But it doesn't look good to the public, and I get residents mailing me saying that was a whitewash. That's their opinion. That's their perception. We can't take that away from people. That we may say it's wrong, but that is genuinely somebody's perception. It's not a good look. I don't think any of my other notes. I think everything else has been covered. Thank you.
Councillor Fluker, I'll let you, because your 3.3 issue might have been questions to Mr Barker.
I'm grateful, Chairman. Chairman, I'll go straight to...
3 minutes, no more.
Chairman, you've set a precedent because I've been timing. Members on average have been speaking 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Chairman, can I take you immediately to page 78? Chairman, page 78, Plan and Advisory Service report legal resource. I'm heartened that the Monitoring Office have got the resources to do this, but only for one committee. With the greatest respect, I don't know whether or not they're planning trained, but if this doesn't go ahead, then we clearly need to review the establishment there to make sure that we're getting best value, because they've clearly got time. Chairman, the guidance for best practice just below, most councils have a delegation rate of over 90%. Malden was around 80. Well, Chairman, anybody that's read the report that went to council, went to strategy and resources on the 29th of September, and I do hope Mr Barker's read everything. It says there, applications, decisions delegated, and it lists all the councils, and I'm pleased to say that Malden was actually 97. So 97, not 80, so I'm not sure where that comes from. The Overview and Scrutiny Committee we've dealt with, inefficiencies running meetings and meetings being cancelled. Well, any meetings can be cancelled, but at the time they're cancelled, the reports haven't been written anyway. All that's been reported, all that's done is the validation. And Chairman, I think Councillor Wright asked about appeal decisions. And Chairman, this went to PG&A on the 29th of September, so I'm not making this up. It's all there. I mean, I presume Mr Barker's read this, but he seemed to add an awful lot of weight to the fact that members were making poor decisions, uninformed poor decisions. So, Chairman, let's have a look at this. Appeal decisions allowed 20, 17 were delegated, 3 were decisions to overturn a committee. And they were allowed. So it strikes me as though members are doing quite well with what they're supposed to be doing. And then when we look at appeals dismissed, Mr Quelch, I hate you to miss this. When we start looking at appeals dismissed, there were 21 in this period. 19 were delegated decisions. 1 was a decision overturned at committee, so you got 1 wrong. And 1 was a decision where the officers and the committee agreed. So really, out of all of that, there is only 1 appeal that went down because of members' behaviour. So I don't really get that, Chairman. And then just finally, when I can find my asterisks, is when we start talking about appeal costs. I mean, the appeal costs, this great appeal costs at 215,000 plus her own costs, which were about 20,000, I think, £235,000. It says on here that this was South East Committee overturned an officer's recommendation. Well, it wasn't. It was the District Planning Committee where they come together. Chairman, I really feel as though much of the information in this report isn't quite right. It's either not right or the information that was given to PGA was wrong. I don't know which, but I feel very uncomfortable making decisions, although I do believe the PGA stuff is correct. But Chairman, we have a choice. You know, well, I don't want any more working groups. They cost a fortune. You know, we need to make a decision, Chairman. And I would propose, Chairman, that contrary to the officer's recommendation, that we stay
You
with
can't,
three.
Councillor Fluker. There's already an amendment.
Well, Chairman, we'll deal with the amendment, Chairman. But one thing I would say is this: is that somebody said don't leave it to the new intake of councillors or the new administration. But the Director of Strategy, Performance and Governance has already said that one of the most important documents, other than the local development plan that this council produces, the corporate plan, will not be agreed until the new administration is in place. So based on that alone, I think that we should at the least defer it, but at best not support these recommendations.
Right. Everybody has had a say. We've taken over an hour, which is about what I expected. Councillor Siddle has made an amendment.
Two amendments. One needs a second.
No, Councillor Siddle has made an amendment. You can only have one amendment at a time.
I did them both at the same time.
No, you can't do that. Your amendment was for 15, so I'll put that
With 8 substitutes.
with 8 substitutes. Yeah.
So what about the other 10 members? Everybody or nobody.
Is that seconded a recorded vote?
Yes.
Okay, Tara, we're voting on a committee, a single committee.
Sorry, Chairman, I was seconding Councillor Siddle's proposal, not seconding the vote.
No, yeah.
15.
The amendment is that there's a single planning committee of 15 with 8 substitutes. Tara, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Members, if you could just indicate for, against, or abstaining for the amendments, starting with Councillor Bassett.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Against.
Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs. Channer.
For.
Councillor Dewick.
Against.
Councillor Durham.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Fleming.
For.
Councillor Fluker.
Against.
Councillor Hurd.
For.
Councillor Helm.
Against.
Councillor Hubner.
For.
Councillor Hull.
Against.
Councillor Keys.
Against.
Councillor Langan.
Against.
Councillor Morley.
Against.
Councillor Nunn.
Against.
Councillor Shaughnessy.
For.
Councillor Siddle.
For.
Councillor Skeens.
Abstain.
Councillor Spenceley.
Against.
Councillor Stamp.
Against.
Councillor Stevens.
There's too many mics on.
Oh,
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Stilts.
Against.
Councillor Swain.
For.
Councillor Mrs. Thompson.
For.
Councillor Miss White.
Against.
Chairman, the results of that are 12 for, 13 against, and 2 abstentions.
I'm reminded that once as leader, I lost the vote by 1 to go to a single planning committee. I was starting to sweat a bit there. So now we have the we come back to the recommendations as they stay under 1, 2 and 3. I should have asked the leader to sum up, but in view of the...
I'd like to propose that we stay with the 3 area planning committees if I get a second.
Well...
You can't do that.
No, you've got to vote against the recommendation or the recommendations. Right, we'll go straight to that then, Ms Bird. The for or against on the recommendations contained on what page is it? Page 77.
Can we take the recommendations individually?
No, I'll take them all together because of the time.
Thank you.
Chairman, time plays no part in democracy. Can I just say I'm looking forward to leader's question.
Together.
Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'd just like to give notice of motion that should this next one fail, I will put a motion that all applications go to one committee, the district planning committee, and we still don't have the areas.
I don't think you can do that. I think you have to once this vote has been taken, you can't put an amendment down, can you, Simon?
No, but you can put forward a motion, couldn't you? Providing it's within the report.
Yeah.
It's within the matter.
Clear, we're now voting for or against keeping the planning committees.
Yes.
So we're saying if we're
no, you're voting against the coming to one planning committee.
For or against the new setup. Thank
you. Miss Bird, please call the roll.
Can we just clarify that?
You're voting for the substantive motion on the recommendations contained on the report. I've got the leader indicating now.
Well, Chairman, I wasn't allowed to sum up, as you quite rightly said, so I've lost the opportunity to comment on what came forward in the previous debate, so I didn't have the advantage of making my points known. Therefore, Chairman, what I'm hearing that I could move a motion regarding, as long as it's in the report, and Councillor Siddle was allowed to do that regarding the number changing to 9, I would then like to propose, Chairman, that we actually do go with 15, as Councillor Mrs Thompson has said, on a single committee.
31.
I don't see why I cannot do that. 31, sorry, 31, sorry. 31, beg your pardon.
One committee?
I believe that's what the monitoring officer has just said.
Well, in that case, we'll vote for my motion, which is to stay with the status quo.
Members, I believe that the consensus of this is going to be quite clear. I won't consider any more amendments or motions. I will put the recommendations as contained on the report. If you agree them, you're for. If you're against them, you're against. Miss Bird.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. If you could just indicate for or against or abstain when I call your name, please. And starting with Councillor Bastinger, please.
Against.
Councillor Bell.
Against.
Councillor Boyce.
Abstain.
Councillor Mrs Channer.
If we're voting on the recommendations on your paper 4. Oh, sorry, 4.
Councillor Jewett.
Against.
Councillor Durham.
For.
Councillor Edwards.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Fleming.
Against, because I don't agree with little 2, thank you.
Councillor Fluker.
Oh, I agree with little 1, 2 and 3, so against.
Councillor Hurd.
For.
Councillor Helm.
Against.
Councillor Hoover,
Against.
Councillor Hull,
Against.
Councillor Keys,
Against.
Councillor Lagan,
Against, please, Tara.
Councillor Worley,
Against.
Councillor Nunn,
Sorry, against.
Councillor Shaughnessy,
For.
Councillor Siddle,
For.
Councillor Skeens,
Against.
Councillor Spenceley,
Against.
Councillor Stamp,
Against.
Councillor Stevens,
For.
Councillor Mrs Stilts,
Against.
Councillor Swain,
Abstain on the grounds we haven't considered the report thoroughly.
For.
sorry, Councillor Mrs Thompson, could you repeat that?
That was a 4, please.
Four, thank you so much. And Councillor Miss White.
Against.
Thank you, Chairman. The results of that are 7 for, 18 against, 2 abstentions.
Right, that is lost, and we'll move on to schedule of meetings on page 89 to 94, and I think there might be 2 options there. There's only one option that we'll choose in. Leader.
Well, Chairman, yes, in light of that decision, there is only one option now, and the schedule of meetings, really, I'm going to go straight to the recommendation for 2023 municipally be approved and set out in the appropriate appendix, Chairman, with area planning committees. Thank you.
Councillor Fluker.
Chairman, I'm sure there was a time when what we used to call the programme committees used to meet 8 times a year, and that still managed to dovetail into council. But it seems to me, if my mathematics is correct, that at the moment the strategy and resources and PGA have only got 6 meetings, and it seems to me that the agendas of these committees seem to be getting bigger and bigger. And I do know that, it's really important that they do dovetail into the business of council, but not everything has to dovetail in. And I just think, we're getting to the stage, I'm seriously not going to keep talking till 10:30, but I'm going to bring forward a proposal. But it's too late, we've got PGA, strategy and resources, we've got the officers here tonight. I mean, how they are managing to, all 4 of them look so attentive, I don't know. It's getting late, I'm getting tired, everyone's getting a bit grumpy. And I just think that when we look at this schedule of meetings, Chairman, we should perhaps try and spread them a bit, and maybe, if we've got time, Mr Dodson can have a look at that. And also, Chairman, I don't know how people feel about it, but is it really necessary to start meetings at 7:30 rather than 7 p.m? And the other thing, Chairman, that concerns me enormously with some of these meetings and the scheduling is the overall agendas, because we get to the stage where, careful, Chairman, you might miss my next gem. Thank you very much, Chairman. What I was also, I've forgotten what I was going to say now, but Chairman, well, I think Mr.
I'm listening.
Mr. Crouch, give the benefit of that, it must be very important. But Chairman, we get to the stage where we need to look at the way these agendas are structured. Look, we've got 2 officers sitting here, been here since 7:30. It's 10:30. They're only here because of P&C. I mean, can we not have a look at this and try and get the P&C on early so that we can get the officers home early, and if necessary, meet earlier? We've got a duty of care of all of our staff.
Well, if we didn't
what
have
was
so
this
much
agenda item?
in, we'd probably been a half hour earlier. Thank you, Councillor Fluker.
Chairman, now it's 10:30. Can I propose that this meeting's adjourned sine die?
No,
Thank
you cannot.
Well, Chairman, I think it's the will of a lot of people.
It's my discretion, Chairman. Councillor Fluker. Do members accept that schedule of meetings?
Yeah, agree.
The leader wants to say something.
Well, Chairman, the 2 officers that Councillor Fluke has referred to, I think they're here for agenda item number 20, and I'm wondering if that could be brought up.
No, I'm just dealing with the schedule of meetings now. Do the members agree the schedule of meetings? Agree. Thank you. Right, now obviously it's gone 10 o'clock, so we don't do 16. Sorry, Councillor Stamp?
Chairman, it's 10:30.
Yeah, but we need at least the
Chairman, I have to leave. I'm terribly sorry, but I do have to go. My apologies.
Has a duty of care to its staff, and the staff have a duty of care to members. You can't be at 10:30 and expect to make informed decisions.
Will members allow me to do just one more report in P&C?
Yes, but only if it's leaders' questions.
No, that's not in P&C,
This is subversive democracy,
no,
Chairman.
In the Constitution...
I know what the Constitution says.
Questions to the leader, not after 10 o'clock.
Chairman, can you imagine what that sounds like to anybody that's listening to this meeting?
I know exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like the chairman is ruling. I've got lots of hands up. What are they saying? Can I do one more? Oh, I'm not closing the meeting. I'm going to exclude the press and public and do one more item.
Chairman, can I propose, we have had the two officers remaining here, and that's the point I was trying to make. And I believe, unless they tell me to the contrary, that they are here for agenda item number 20, under P&C, commercial project update. Yes, they're both saying yes, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, this cannot be democratically correct. We've got members leaving left, right and centre. The time we've been here 3 hours. The fact is they've crammed a huge amount of business into this agenda, far, far more than should be expected of us. We should be allowed to do this business properly and correctly when we've all got time and effort to think about. I've got to be up at 6 in the morning for work. As I know of others, it is not fair on members and officers to carry on with this now.
Right, I get the message. I'll now close the meeting at 22:33.
Closing on
I'm adjourning. I'm sorry, Miss Bird. I'm sorry. I'm adjourning.
Well, I think it's probably better to close.
Oh, right.